Now he's more like doom and gloom. But back then he was all like, oh, why doesn't God want us to be happy and have a good time? All that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, that is quite a shift. Yeah, that I was going to ask you, how many survival food buckets do you think I need for my wife and I for the upcoming Russian war?
Well, yeah. Well, the funny thing I find about that is like, I don't really pay attention to a lot of that stuff. But when COVID happened, I was like, shit. Oh, shit.
Good thing I got 40 buckets of grits.
What if he was right the whole time, Because that was never really, that's not my thing. But it is funny to see like how horrific things have gotten in the world. And, you're like, oh, like.
Now you're kicking yourself for sending back that power.
Well, yeah, I'm like, when we all, everybody's going to be like, can we go to your dad's house now? Yeah. I don't think I'm allowed to go. So good luck.
Everybody, we're back with another episode of Growing Up. I'm Sam.
And I'm Casey.
And start off with some business. We were recently on the Back in the Cool Day podcast. We had those guys on our podcast a few weeks back now. And during that episode we mentioned we were going to be on there. We were, and it's out. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. We really like those guys a lot. Blake and Eric, they have a great podcast, especially if you're into like the early 2000s emo, metal, whatever, scene music. It's all scene music. Let's go with that.
Right.
And they hit it all, and they have different musicians on. Last year, actually, Furnace Fest was the big thing. That was like, what? If you were into Christian metal or any Christian scene music at all, in the 2000s, that was like your mecca. Like that was, I don't think anyone experienced FOMO like they did until all the bands and full lineups were announced. Furnace Fest, like a lot of dudes or people, shouldn't just say dudes. It's like everyone in their 30s was willing to drop $500 on a weekend to go to that, get a hotel and shit.
It was a who's who of bands from that era.
Yeah, but they did a whole like road to Furnace Fest, and I talked to a bunch of people who did like put Furnace Fest together and stuff like that. So they've done some cool stuff and talked to some really cool people. And if you're into all that, definitely check out their podcast. And if you're not, well, at least check out the episode we're on, because it was fun and we had a good time with them. I have a couple of things I want to start us off with, Casey, outside of that, because I feel like this was a week where like just like little things got under my skin, and it's just like pet peeve shit where you're like, is this serious? Like, whether it's shit people complained about or just weird things people do that don't make sense to me. And I think we've had a conversation about the first one, maybe. But one of them is when people go to pee in a urinal, and it's like the second they start peeing, they hit the flush.
They got that preemptive flush, like they're in a hurry, they can't stand.
And then like you hear the flush stop, and then they finish peeing, and then they leave. Like, I just don't that does not make any sense to me. Why you wouldn't just like pee and then flush? You don't save time. It doesn't do anything. I'm baffled by it, and it leaves a little bit of pee in the toilet when you leave, and it really makes me mad.
Yeah, leave a couple of seed dribbles for your next bro.
I don't get it. It's stupid. People who do that, if you do that and you're listening, you're stupid. Also, when people,
it's harsh.
I know. I'm sorry.
You know what I don't like?
I don't want to be shitty.
Like when people with normal sized legs, how they can stand like almost inside the urinal when they're going. And because my legs are only 18 inches long and I've got chubby thighs, like I have to stand away from it.
You don't just lift your balls up and rest them on the part of the urinal that protrudes?
No.
Give them a little wash. Dip them in a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a bird bath.
Yeah, you just like dunk them in. It's like when you're like dunking a tea bag into a cup of hot water. It's like just like that, washing them off.
I was explaining to April a while back about how there's like this whole unspoken rule of etiquette about which urinal you go to in any given crowd situation.
Oh yeah.
Like you always got to leave a space. You don't want to be the one on the end that's next to the sink. If there's somebody like way at one end, like you kind of pick the middle so you're courteous for the next person who comes in so they can stay away from you. It's an important thing.
If there's only one person in there and you go right next to them, they want to kill you. They at least want you to die while using the bathroom.
That's a good time to offer a handshake too.
Yeah. Also, the only time it doesn't matter is like really crowded events where like all the urinals are taken up. And I swear that the places that have the most crowded events, like a venue, like or like well, probably not with newer stadiums, but basically venues or maybe older arena bathrooms or something like that, where like there's maybe 6 inches of space between each urinal and there's no divider. And they're the ones that like don't go up high. They're the ones that just like stick straight out of the wall. So you're literally just hanging dong next to like 15 strangers between the ages of like 11 and 75. And it's fucking terrible.
There's like few things less comfortable. Like when you walk into a public bathroom and there's a little kid standing there with his pants around his ankles going in the urinal. Yeah, that might be one of the few things that's more uncomfortable than,
especially when there's when there is no dividers between urinals.
Yeah, I just hold it.
Like, you ever walk in and then see it, you scope the place out and you're like, I'll leave.
No, I it's a point of pride for me that I'll go in any bathroom. Like I really don't differentiate.
That's right. You were posting some on your personal Instagram or posting some raunchy ass truck stop bathroom.
Yeah, or like some of the shops that I go into, like these car repair places. Some of them are wild.
Oh my god! Like broken sinks and toilets, like the porcelain's basically shattered.
Yeah,
you're just peeing down a drain.
If there's a rubber hose just laying on the floor, that's usually a bad sign.
Yeah, okay. I think I have a couple more. The other one that got to me this week was when I was walking into work, and not someone that I work with, but someone was holding the door for me, but I was just too far away to hold the door for me.
You got to do that awkward, like speed walk shuffle thing.
And they smile at you like, I'm doing something nice. Like, you ruined my morning.
And it's not like you get there any faster. You just have to communicate to them that like, hey, I see you and I'm appreciative of this. Yeah, that's why I'm hurrying for you.
Your arms move like you're on a fucking elliptical or something, but your legs just go regular speed. And then and you're like, thanks, really appreciate it. And they're like, yeah, of course. Have a good morning. And you're like, it's not hard to open a door. I get that they're trying to be nice, but why is that nice? Why is that considered nice to do that?
Well, if you're right next to them and it makes sense to like hold the door so it doesn't slam right as the other person's walking up.
And it feels really shitty if you do that by accident. I mean, I've definitely like not realized someone was behind me and not really held the door. And that feels shitty. It's also, what another weird one is in a crowded space where you hold the door for somebody and you don't realize that there's a lot of people who are about to go out the door or maybe in the door.
And you get stuck there
holding the door for like 45 seconds. And you're like, you're trying to let it go, but you don't want to just like let it hit somebody. But at that point, you'll never see him again. So you should probably just go for it.
Yeah. See the difference, the length between you and the door that's being held determines whether this act is a courtesy or a performance. And like, you holding the door while I'm still, 15 yards back, like you're performing for me and I'm not impressed. Okay.
It's like, why perform? Like, I want to get in those. Are you a bad person if you stop them and say, hey, I appreciate you holding the door for me. I'm curious though. What was the motivation behind it?
That's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
They'll be like, excuse me? I'm like, look, no, it's also like I feel like that's an I think you should leave kind of thing too.
Yeah.
I could see it
they could tackle this problem.
Where you're like, well, I was 15 feet away and you held the door and I just don't know why you did that. What were you thinking? Like, what was your thought process behind what you were doing?
It's one that gets under my skin all the time is like when people violate like obvious traffic laws in some sort of like display of quote unquote politeness or whatever. Like you pull up to a stop sign, they definitely got there first, and you're sitting there waiting for them to go, and they're like, oh no, you go. Or like you both get there at the same time, you go, you give them the hand signal to go, and they're like, no, you like just
and
go.
Then you both go a little bit, and then you stop and you do that until your bumpers meet in the intersection. That happened to me in Virginia all the time. Not a lot of that happens in Massachusetts, to be honest. The first time I encounter, of course it does happen, but not a lot. Most people are just like, I was here first, I'm going, and there's no issues because that's how traffic works. But the first time when I had moved to Virginia, and oh my God, that's the one that stuck out to me the most. There's a couple other weird Virginia moves, but that one, that courtesy bullshit. It's like that fake ass. It's probably not fake. It's just cultural. It's just like it bred into them. They're like, yo, go ahead, it's fine. No one's in that much of a rush, maybe. But God, the amount of times that you do that where you wave each other on and you both go and you both stop and you're like, and you can see each other like kind of like, oh, that's funny, right? And then like happens a couple more times and you're just like, fuck this shit, and you just punch it and go.
Just ram them. Yeah. We're a couple of crotchety old curmudgeons, man.
Oh yeah, here's the thing. I feel like a fine person. Like whatever. I'm a regular person. I think I have a lot of shitty thoughts. A lot of people do. It just makes me feel so good to say them. And this isn't it. Like this is just regular, I guess. But like, I feel like there's so many really shitty. There's a few. Everyone has those safe people that they can say like really shitty, whether it's just jokes, like the worst of the worst joke. And those are the ones that make me feel the best. I love those. I get the warm and fuzzies when I can say something so fucked up, and the person you say it to is just like, I get it, and I feel that too, and it kind of brings you closer together.
It's like a release valve.
Yeah.
And then you just have to hope that you don't run against that person for like a Senate seat someday.
Oh yeah. That especially if they could like pull up old text messages and shit like that. Oh,
right.
I definitely, any political campaign I have would be thwarted by most of my text threads with my close friends. Okay,
yeah, last one. Everybody's in that boat.
And I saw this week in a Facebook group I'm in, and I won't give that Facebook group away, but it's a group where people discuss ex-evangelical, post-Christian kind of things. It's a bit trying to be in this group. I don't really comment on it or participate in it in any way.
Meaning like the stuff that the stuff that people say is like, it's a lot to deal with, or it's kind of
some of it's just like, you're okay. I'm just not there anymore, but it gets on my nerves. It's just like, I don't know. I'm trying to decide if I should just like cut this person out of my life completely because they say things that trigger me whenever I don't know, whatever. We don't need to go down that road, but I don't want to sound like a dick, but sometimes it's just like, maybe you're just being a little too sensitive. I don't think that statement flies too well these days, but I'll stick with it. So anyway, and maybe this will get my point across. And this is what I saw. Someone was about someone who people make a lot of posts and they'll put a trigger warning, right? TW, thoughts of suicide, TW, depression, TW. Of course, certain things like that are fine. Some people might not, maybe someone just, lost someone to suicide and they don't want to read a post about suicide. I totally understand that. I also wonder how much those work. Because if the first thing you see before a post is TW and then something that's triggering to you, you're probably still going to be like, I can't not read this, and then do it anyway. It's like parental advisories and shit. Like they don't work. But the trigger warning was Sunday school and Sunday school songs.
What?
Yes. Apparently it's super triggering for people to read posts about people's experience with Sunday school or their kids coming back and singing songs they learned in Sunday school that they don't like. And that's when I realized I need a trigger warning for stupid trigger warnings.
It's like back to the same principle. It's like, is this trigger warning a courtesy or is this a performance?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
are you trying to help people who may not want to read something that could be actually traumatizing or whatever? Or are you hyping your post with a fake trigger warning?
I don't know. I don't know what's that I know people had bad Sunday school. Are there that many that are bad enough where like, because at that point, what isn't a trigger warning? Trigger warning, elementary school.
Yeah. Trigger warning. This is a group about church.
Yeah, I know. It is. It's a group about people who left fundamentalism, and they're like, maybe they want to talk about how to, raise their kids in a way that they can still do Christian things, but not. That's kind of why I'm in it. I'm like, that's people, but there's some people I like what they say and whatever, but there's just a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of posts that are just like, look, at the end of the day, it's someone who probably just needs some sort of validation, or maybe all this shit's new to them.
Maybe they don't have a friend to say messed up things to get them out of their system.
But there are definitely posts where you're like, you're soliciting responses. And if you're doing that, maybe you really need it. So I don't want to be overly judgmental of that. All I know is that if you're triggered by conversations about Sunday school, you should probably get rid of the internet and just see a therapist 5 days a week until you can figure out how to navigate this world without coming into things that are going to make people. I don't know. I
gotta go out in the woods and live that Unabomber life.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Start your own cult. That's my best advice. If you feel triggered by it, own it, take it to the extreme, and start your own cult. And I think that'll help.
Yeah. Well, at least you're making the rules then. You're the one having sex with everyone's wife.
Exactly. And if you're not having sex with them, you at least get to tell them that they can't have sex with each other. And that's
you at least get to beat the other members.
Yeah. Whippings in the right context.
You can guilt them into chemical castration or something.
One thing I also just learned about this week, I'm going to just blow through this one. We have something that you were going to bring up, but it's the purified translation of the Bible. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's not much of a translation, apparently, but it basically just changes all references of wine to grape juice. That's so stupid.
Just get the problem at its core.
Yeah.
It's such a great allegory for like all of the problems that people have with like all this, like, well, let's take it back to the original Greek and you'll see why I'm right.
Yeah. It's it was a graduate of Miami University, Princeton Theological Seminary, Princeton University, and Columbia University. Previously served on the translation committee for the new international version. That's crazy. It's an edition of the New Testament, which was published in 2000. And the preface, I'm on Wikipedia. I should have had this up ahead of time with actual things to post. But yeah, they changed. Basically, that's the part of it. I'm sure they change other things too, but that's what stuck out to me.
Either this guy's like a total nut job, or he's trying to squeeze money out of total nut jobs and doing so, knowingly.
Yeah.
It's really hard to put a finger on that whenever you're talking about this kind of stuff.
It is. I think some of these people really just spiral down these rabbit holes. Like, I don't know what the gravitational pull of legalism is for some people. I'm sure if you were going to psychoanalyze them, it would come down to some major insecurities. But it's like if you're just in regular Christianity and those people who, because there's always that person, right, who wants to make it more extreme. You've talked about those people from your church background, and like, there's always that person that wants to be like, well, I think we should move this to the next level. We need to abstain from this or that. Like they'll take it to more legalistic extremes, and I don't know what it is that makes people inclined to that. If you're in a community that's saying that the way everyone's living and that this works, and you're not seeing it affect people negatively, then I don't understand the drift towards like more extreme versions of that.
It's just the same. It's like, it's just this, it's like sincerity pageantry. It's like, I'm this much, you're committed. I'm this much more committed to these principles. And you know, I'm sure it probably like it revolves around a subject that there isn't like concrete answers on. So instead of just having a circular debate forever with the people around you, you know, just make your own translation or write a doctrinal statement with that in the legal language and make every member sign it. You know, it's like a just a dumb way to try to like shut down debate or alternate opinions about something that probably doesn't matter. In this case, definitely doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously ends up boiling down to these people believing that to follow a strict code to be saved. They don't say that. Some of them don't say that. I remember talking to a friend about this once where, I mean, this was over 10 years ago when I was still in more in that bubble. I was on my way out of it, but my friend was like, I feel like everyone throws around the word legalism too much because legalism implies like religious legalism particularly implies that your salvation is contingent on your rule following, that like you're not really saved if you're not doing X, Y, and Z. And those more radical groups, they'll get rid of you because if you don't follow the rules, because you're not like them anymore. And so his argument was that that's not what most evangelical churches are, that they're not legalistic because they're not hinging your salvation on it. But I disagree with that because it's not that they don't, it's that they don't say that. It's not that they don't think that or don't act in a way that they believe that. They act in a way that suggests they believe that's true, even if in their church documents they're not stating it specifically. But you wouldn't have that hard line about it.
If you make it so uncomfortable for people to have a different opinion on that subject that they really can't, they either have to be quiet or comply or leave, then for all intents and purposes, it's kind of like talking to so many people from that community about something like racism, where like they wholeheartedly believe because they don't have this like conscious thought that people with a different colored skin are lesser than them, then they're not racist. Like there's no racism there. And it's like, okay, but if you hate everything about a culture and blame every problem on that, and because it's not like, then that's racist. That's in practice, that's racism,
Right. It's I think that's a great it's exactly like that. It's like kind of missing the forest to the trees.
So April and I watched the Hillsong documentary this week.
Okay.
And I had heard that it was coming out, and I saw a trailer for it like maybe a month or so ago. I don't know a ton about Hillsong, but everybody knows that Carl Lentz guy just from hanging out with Justin Bieber and stuff.
Yeah, and hanging out with his pants just barely hanging on by his dong. That guy.
Oh yeah, it's like hanging a raincoat on a a nail in the wall or something.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So I went into it without knowing a lot about them, other than just like they're really big and they have a big music thing going on and stuff. Had heard a few people say that they liked it, that it was really good or really interesting. I didn't think it was very good, honestly.
No. Yeah, I feel like I've had like probably like 3 or 4 people be like, "Oh my God, have you watched this yet?" So my impression is that I was getting ready to watch something that like really pulled the curtain back on something fucked up.
Well, first off, like I have two real criticisms of it. Number one is I don't think there's like hardly any new information here. Like from what I've seen of it and stuff like that, it's basically just kind of like they took all of the news headlines and stuff and put them all into one place.
Yeah.
Right.
My understanding of Hillsong from knowing nothing about this documentary is that like the founder of it is I guess like a few things. The founder of it was found out to be a pedophile. I feel like nothing really happened until after he died. This is like the information that's out there. So I'm sure it's covered in the documentary, but they're not probably breaking stories with these. So like him being a pedophile, the son being a piece of shit and covering it up, and then getting it. I don't know. He got into some trouble again recently. I forget what it is, but I just know he's like in hot water again. That's right. They found out about it, that he might have been covering up, or they're investigating it, and he was going to step back, but then he didn't. Now there's some more damning evidence. But then the other thing was Carl Lentz. That obviously was big. And then the fourth one was that the fourth thing being that they've just been making shitty music for so long that's absolutely changed the evangelical music game.
Yes, all of those are that's pretty much an outline for the documentary.
Okay.
Which brings me to my second complaint. It's 3 hours long, and it really could have been about 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
It's okay. So we talked a lot about Gangster Capitalism season 3.
Yeah.
And we had Zach Levitt on, who kind of like made that whole thing happen. And not everybody is going to love every part of that series or agree with all of the conclusions, but it was very fair. It wasn't like a out to destroy liberty as a whole and stuff. It was out to bring you valid information and valid critiques of the things they've done.
Right.
And I don't know, it was just really well done and put together and brought, 6 episodes or whatever. I mean, they were just jam-packed with information and interviews that were really great.
Yeah, new information that had never seen the light of day.
They really dug into that.
Yeah.
And you talk about the scope of what they had to deal with, what they had to go through and stuff like that. I mean, there was a lot less information out there about the stuff that's been going on at Liberty and everything. They did really excellent work on that. The Hillsong documentary is like, it's so surface level. It leaves like a lot of questions unanswered. Like they kind of go into detail about something like the fact that the church is organized into like 40 different LLCs,
Okay.
And they'll make a point like that. That's just kind of like it's not really like an interesting thought on its own. And then they'll just kind of, instead of going into it, they'll just kind of leave you with this innuendo. Like, why would they need 40 LLCs? Is it to spread out risk in case of litigation? And that's it. That's where they leave you. So it doesn't do anything with the information.
I feel like like if someone wanted to make a documentary where they investigated all 40 of those LLCs and pulled some shit and shade, then that sounds like a documentary. But just pointing out something that's probably anyone can look up, like that's not hidden information, I'm guessing. And to just point that out, is it a little weird? Sure. That seems odd. But like, if you're a 3-part documentary and all you do is point something out instead of doing an actual dive into it, it feels like poor filmmaking. It feels like you're a bad documentarian.
Yeah. Well, and like, I don't know, there's a lot of it that, if you grew up if you're listening to this show, you're pretty fluent in evangelical culture, especially from the era that's covered in this documentary series. And like, when they've got the Carl Lentz episode where they're talking about him having an affair and stuff like that, they spend a lot of time like talking about messages that he taught at another church when he was younger and stuff like that. And it's just purity culture 101 stuff.
Sure.
And I mean, it's like 20 minutes of just like, he talking about how he emphasized purity and stuff like that. And, it's not good, but it's the same experience that every one of us had that grew up in there. I mean, it's not revolutionary in any sort of way. And I mean, there's a lot of it that just comes down to like, these guys make a lot of money, and these two guys at the top, or Carl Lentz isn't at the top anymore, but like, they're charismatic people that got really popular, and they really like criticize like the fact that they appealed to celebrities and things like that. They spent a lot of time talking about like how gross it was that they seemed to emphasize that they had these celebrities come into their church. Dude, how many restaurants have you walked? If you go into a spaghetti restaurant in, St. Louis and, Carl Weathers was there in 1982. They've got a picture of him with the owner on the wall. I mean, it's not any big surprise that if they attracted those kind of people, they're going to draw attention to it. And, at the end of the day, like you look at some of that, like, cause they spent a lot of time on the celebrity thing. It's like, if Carl Lentz wouldn't have been hanging out with Justin Bieber, this documentary wouldn't even be a thing. No one would care about most of what we're talking about here.
Sure. Yeah, no, that seems to make sense, because outside of the main things, the three main issues that are already and have been public knowledge and are current, if they weren't investigated, are being currently investigated, it sounds like they're just describing any evangelical church, or maybe not any, but many, a lot. So to make it, I guess you could look at most evangelical churches and be like, and look at the way they spend their money. Did you know that 85% of the money given to the church stays within these walls? And if you're looking at a church that's, has like a modest size building and maybe 300 members, no one's going to care. But most evangelical churches, if you scale them up, they're going to look just like Hillsong. That's a problem. Sure, you do a documentary on how much money stays within church walls. I think what I'm trying to say is that I expect documentaries to bring something to the table, not just repeat news stories and then ask open-ended questions about stuff that they didn't do any investigating into. And that's what like, this sounds like.
There's like portions of it, like towards the end, where they really, they couldn't, it seems like they weren't settled on whether or not, this Brian guy that runs the church, like, is he a phony huckster that's just squeezing money out of a congregation that's too stupid to realize that he's a con man? Or is he like a fundamentalist nut that's out to like conquer the world for Christianity? Like, they kind of bounce back and forth between it without really giving you much answers on it. They make some like really broad accusations that like Hillsong is a cult, and it's just silly. Like, it's typical, that's we've talked about it before, but that like throwing around the word cult doesn't add any credibility to what you're doing. Like, and
if you honestly can walk out the doors and never go back, and if someone reaches out and says, "Hey, I noticed you haven't been here in a while," you're like, "Yeah, I'm not coming back. It's not for me anymore." Like, all right. Well, I hope to see you again someday, brother. If that's how the conversation goes, it's not a cult. They might have cult-like ideas, but it's just that's a word that gets thrown around a lot now. And it feels like, to me, for better or worse, I don't know. I think it's good that there's such a spotlight being shown on the ills of church and the way that they function as organizations, because a lot of them are fucked up, and call it out all day long. I think that's fine, but there is a bit of sensationalization about it. And I think that's just because it hit mainstream. Like, for us, for people who grew up in it, like, and, signed up to, we did everything. We were there all the time. Like, we were the free labor that they depended on to
run. There's some of that in there too.
We set up the chairs, tore them down, got there early, stayed late, like, all for the mission, I guess. I don't know. But I guess, so some of this, when I like hear it being talked about, like, that's not great. But even though I was taken advantage of in church, I don't feel like anybody was intentionally taking advantage of me. But I think the people who had bought into a system that had taken advantage of them, probably at some point. And it gets in this whole, this is how this works. Churches don't just have all this money to throw around until they do. But the kinds that we grew up in weren't exactly like, they might have had money, but they wouldn't if they didn't have people volunteering to do things all the time. And
right.
I don't know. I'm being a little long-winded on it, but I feel like it's just, there's a sensationalization going on right now that wants to paint all of these spaces as just all the money funnels to the top, lines the pockets of a few people, and everyone else is just being taken advantage of, and that it's all a conspiracy. And it's not.
It's popular because people like it. Like, they're not bilking their members out of money in the same way that, like, the Mormon church does, or Jehovah's Witness does, where you got to show your tax statements and prove that you gave them 10% of your gross earnings or anything like that. Like they're collecting money just like any church is, but it's partly because people like what they're selling. You know, whether you're talking about like this, the book that so-and-so wrote, last month, or just the Sunday service that that they're consuming from the pew or from the, streaming or whatever. Like I think there's a lot of legitimate critiques that are made in the documentary, especially when like the stuff that they talk, when they talk about like the abuse, the original founders, abuse of children, and some of this, like there's a young girl that she got groped at like a youth event and has had trouble getting any sort of like justice for what had happened to her. Like there's very legitimate stuff in there that's to be taken seriously. And you know what? I mean, I wouldn't go to Hillsong. I don't find Carl Lentz appealing or Brian What's-His-Face. I think they're douchebags, and I don't know why people are infatuated with them, but I don't know why people are infatuated with Gary Vee. I mean, I think he's annoying, and I hate watching his videos. I'm not going to give him any money, but people do like obviously a lot of people like it, and that doesn't make him a cult leader,
Yeah.
And so it's just it's kind of it's weak, is what I'd say.
Is. And I think
there's about 30 minutes of really good, poignant content in there, and then the rest is just it feels like masturbatory almost, like the continual like going over and over the same points, and like you have to understand these guys are out to conquer the world. Like they have a vision to have churches everywhere, to convert people in and like you're talking about Christianity as a whole.
Newsflash.
You're also talking about Islam and all these other, like that's what religion is. Like religion isn't content to just like serve 30 people in their hometown. Like these people all have grandiose ideas. And anybody who builds an organization the size of something like Hillsong, like they're probably a psychopath. They're probably an egomaniac. Like it's not really surprising that they behave that way. Like, stop going there. Stop giving them your money, and if people do want that and they do like it, then that's their thing. It doesn't mean that they're under some spell or they're stupid and you're smart. Like, it's just people like different things and different communities appeal to them. So I don't know. Carl Lentz sucks. Brian What's-His-Face should go to prison for covering up that abuse. I hope the girl that got groped, I hope she gets a whole bunch of money out of him. As far as a lot of the other stuff in the documentary, it's like, yeah, well, welcome to evangelicalism.
I know. I do want to clarify, even though I think people who listen regularly will understand where I'm coming from. But when I'm talking about the sensationalization of it, I'm not saying that there's plenty of people who are fairly critiquing the Christian institutions and doing a great job at it. Zach Levitt being one of them. But like and I'm not trying to defend their shitty nature and their, the way they take advantage of people, even if it's unintentional. I'm not trying to make a defense for it. My point in juxtaposing that against having talking about a 3-hour documentary is, if you're going to make a documentary, it should highlight something outside of what just church is. And it sounds like they only did that you're saying 30 minutes, like maybe it could have been a 1-hour documentary. But like to focus so much attention on just what church is seems maybe I think the only reason a documentary like that would be greenlit is because it's maybe hitting a new audience. There's probably plenty of people who watch that and were like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And we're over here like, yeah,
this is just a scaled up version of what, like, there's 4 of them in every town,
Literally any church, the one that I went to as a kid, any single church, their whole idea, you look at their fucking church website, it's there's going to be something about the Great Commission in there. And it's going to be about bringing the gospel to all peoples of all nations. And how one day every person in every tribe of every tongue will bow and confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And that's usually after Jesus comes back and slits a bunch of fucking throats. But it'll happen. I mean, they'll get there after they've been coerced enough. But the idea of that is like in most churches. So like, if you scale that up, yeah, that's they're gonna want to put a church in every country around the world if they that is their actual objective, even if it's a 50-person church in the middle of Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. So our guest this week is one that person we've been really excited to share with you guys. We had a great conversation with Jay Bakker. If his name doesn't immediately like resonate with you, his parents were Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, and they were some of the most successful televangelists of all time, and then went through like this very public, very ugly, like catastrophic fall from grace. Ugly. And since then, Jay has gone on to lead his own life and adopt his own version of Christianity. He was one of the first people to be gay affirming as a minister, had TV shows and radio shows at different points. Super interesting guy, and just like a very fun conversation with someone who really thinks on his own about a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I had such a great time talking to him. He's someone I've wanted to talk to for a while. Because a lot of what he says it resonates with me. I appreciate that a lot of people who go through some of the shit that he did, it's easy to throw all of that away. Just be like, this isn't for me. It's obviously trash. He was hurt deeply by a lot of aspects of big Christianity, but he did. He kind of carved his own path and is a progressive. He pastors a progressive church.
Should mention that his dad is still a televangelist.
Yeah.
And a little bit different than he used to be. He's kind of like I don't even know what to say. He hawks like phony products and like survival food rations, and it's like InfoWars level products to protect you from radiation or purify water when the power grid gets shut down by the globalists or whatever. Got in trouble for selling fake COVID cures during the pandemic, some sort of colloidal silver nonsense or something. So Jay is like such an interesting character, especially when you consider who he grew up around and who his parents turned out to be. And just, man, you couldn't find somebody that had been through so much and is still like so full of like this positive energy towards other people. He really kind of exudes that sort of love that you expect to associate with, dyed in the wool Christian.
Yeah. I would say that whatever Christianity should be about is what sunk in for him. And, I think he exemplifies that. He talks a lot about grace and how everybody belongs. And I think what he says is important. I think it matters, and it definitely stuck with me. I've been thinking about this conversation since we had it. And, especially in the world that we live in now, where it's kind of just like everyone wants to just, scream into the void about why everyone else is stupid and this is fucked up and that's fucked up. And, oh, you think like that, you're an awful person. Like, there's just a constant back and forth. And I feel like he takes the road less traveled and has an understanding for people. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with finding healing in the way that he grew up, in the way that he experienced some of the worst of Christianity, but also some of the best of it. And I don't know. I think the path that he's carved ahead for himself is exemplary and just a great comment.
You're going to love him. You can find him on social media all over the place. Look up Jay Bakker. Bakker is Bakker. And definitely follow him. Keep up with what he's got going on. I think he's got a book or two out too. So yeah, that being said, we're going to cut to a word from our sponsor, Minor Threads. And after that, enjoy our conversation with Jay Bakker. Friends, I know a lot of you out there are small business owners. I know a few of you are musicians or artists. Regardless of which camp you fall into, eventually you're going to want to put out some custom merchandise. But the prospect of getting a design together and going through one of these impersonal, large-scale websites can be intimidating and tedious. And that's why we're proud to be sponsored by Minor Threads. Minor Threads is a North Texas-based custom printing company that is able to help you get your logo, your company's branding information, your design onto almost anything.
Maybe you want to order some shirts, some stickers, banners, maybe enamel pins. The merch game's crazy these days. Minor Threads can help you with all sorts of promotional products. They also specialize in custom printing with low minimums. That can be great if you're a small company just looking to put in a small order. And for our environmentally friendly friends out there, they have plenty of eco-friendly options as well.
So if you're ready to take that step and get some merchandise, go to minorthreadsco.com and request a quote. Mention this ad and you get up to 15% off custom print orders over $100. 15%. So again, go to minorthreadsco.com and tell them your boys at Grown Up Christian sent you. And we're back with our guest, Jay Bakker. Jay, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
This might be a controversial topic to start out on, but I recently watched The Eyes of Tammy Faye movie that came out last year, and you appeared briefly in the movie as an infant, played by actress Callie Lippian.
What?
Yeah, which is a progressive choice. But looking at, and I don't want to throw shade or anything, but like I found Callie's representation of you to be sort of one-dimensional.
Yeah.
The word wooden comes to mind. I don't know.
Her head wasn't big enough, to be honest with you. I was like an Uncle Fester type of baby. So
I don't know if that
my
was
daughter was exactly the same as my daughter. She's very beautiful and cute right now, but she was the same. She had kind of an Uncle Fester head. But I was a C-section, so my mom looked out there.
Yours didn't get squished and oblong on the way out. Like
no, just perfectly round.
Yeah.
This is amazing how people like all look the same as babies and as, old people. Like we all kind of go back into the mold that we started out in.
And doing the same things.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of that.
What a glorious life.
Not for me. That'll be great when my kids have to deal with it, but having it is not what I'm excited about.
Revenge will be sweet, oh children.
Oh yeah. That's what's cool. Everyone, parents always like, if you have, like, I can't wait till you have kids so that way you can see what it's like. But even if you don't have kids, they're going to be like, gotcha anyway.
Yeah. Unless your kids send you away.
Yeah, I know. It's getting so much more popular. I'm excited. Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, so we're pretty excited to talk to you. And, leading into this, I watched quite a few interviews with you on different mediums and stuff. And I feel like
I appreciate you doing research. That's rare nowadays. I had a podcast for a while called It was called This is Radiocast. Man, I spent so much time doing research. And I'm always surprised how many people don't do research.
Yeah, it's at least good to know a little bit about where you're coming from.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone thinks they're Mark Maron. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Mark
Maron was my inspiration originally. Actually, he was my inspiration, but I really did a lot of notes and stuff. I was on Mark Maron's podcast once. He was really cool.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I was on, his podcast. I was putting a bunch of quotes of his up on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. I was a big fan of his, and his assistant was like, "Hey, would you like to be on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, if you can make it out to the garage." I'm like, I had never paid for a plane ticket to go be on a podcast ever. And I was just like, yep, whoop, flying out there and did the interview with him. Actually, it's funny because my manager at the time accidentally drove to his house rather than picking me up. So I took my first Uber and he's like, just take an Uber. And I was like, what's an Uber? I don't even know what an Uber is, so. But yeah, I was like 237 or something. I can't remember, but it was like one of those that episode around that, and it was great.
That must
really
be so
raw.
Cool.
Did you get that podcast OG?
Yeah. So I was able to go into into his garage, and it was just I just was like I'm just going to go all the way out on this one, and we did, and it was really great.
So what's his address?
I'd have to go back in my history for that.
Yeah, I watched an interview with you and Larry King. Did you know him well?
I just knew him from the show. We'd have a little bit of conversation before and after. But he was always quite fond of my mom and quite fond of me, I guess, you know, because he would have me on and on. He had me on a show after CNN as well. And I'd been on a show 3 or 4 times. So when my book came out, he had me on a show. And so he was always really pretty generous to my family. And thought a little bit outside of the box, you know, outside of the normal media way of thinking. So yeah, he was cool.
He did seem like a pretty gracious. I think, so I feel like I came into this, you know, I'd heard your family's name before, and I knew a little bit about your dad just from stuff that had popped up on social media and things like that. But I really was surprised at the scope of the initial like controversy and things like that. And I feel like it almost seems to me like the media frenzy around your family was kind of a precursor of what was to come, because that was like pre-OJ trial. That was prior to a lot of the big like
it was huge,
planted flag deal.
It was everywhere. Every type of media. I mean, it was, you know, Saturday Night Live skits, jokes on all the late night talk shows, every news outlet, every, you know, rag magazine in the grocery stores. Obviously, there wasn't the internet at that time, thank God. But of course, maybe it would have been shorter had the internet been around. It would have been like just a week coverage.
I know. You only have to wait for the next controversy before you're pushed to the wayside.
For then, it was like a year and a half. I mean, it was just nonstop. So yeah, it was everywhere, you know, and it was like everybody was, you know, had their mind made up. It was really, it was huge. I mean, I don't think people understand. I didn't even realize how, you know, here I grew up in this, and then really until the scandal happened, until the end of my parents' ministry, did I realize how big it really was, you know?
Yeah. Through like talking about this with some people and stuff, there's a friend of mine that I know through work. And when she was in her like early teens, her mom sold her house in Tulsa and moved to your guys' compound, the PTL, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was no walls around it, so it wasn't a compound. But yeah, there were neighborhoods that my parents had built up around the outside of the area, so if people wanted to come live. I mean, I think the idea was like retirees would come and live amongst the place and could, you know, go to church there and kind of have a safe community to live in and that kind of thing. But yeah,
it was interesting hearing her talk about it, because she was saying that, like, you know, she wasn't really allowed to watch any TV or listen to any music or anything except for PTL. So, you know, being poor in Tulsa, like all of a sudden realizing, you know, that they're uprooting their lives and moving to the Carolinas to be closer to your ministry. She said it was like this grand adventure, and she talked about like being on the premises there, because her mom would work during the week and then she'd spend like 2 days working at PTL, and I guess the organization gave them like kind of like an all access pass to Heritage USA and stuff. So she's like, man, for 2 years I just like had the run of the place, and she said it was like 2 of the most amazing years of her childhood, basically. And she specifically was talking about like Christmas at PTL and just what it
was really amazing. Christmas, like all the Christmas lights, and people would like the freeway was like 5 miles away, and there'd be like 10 miles of traffic. So there would literally be miles of traffic that went on to the freeway for people just to come and see the Christmas lights. That was all over Heritage USA. It's hard to explain Heritage USA because you know, it was such a bizarre type of thing. And it's still nothing like it's ever existed. Like for me, when my dad would fly and speak at these other huge churches, I was always like, oh, this is great, but where's the other stuff? Like, where are the hotels, and where are the other ministry facilities, and where's the water park, or where's this? You know what I mean? And they're like, you know, no other church has had that. And so it was quite wild as a kid growing up in that, because that's what I knew. You know, my school was there. Because, you know, they had a Christian school. And so, but Christmas, I was in plays, you know, I was in Christmas plays. They'd have like 3 or 4 different places you could, you know, plays, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays going on, because you could go to different places. And like, I think it was like 130 different services during the week.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was something really insane. Like, I mean, I had no idea all the stuff that the folks had going on there, you know, until years later when I kind of had to work on my dad's appeal and go through and study all that stuff. And I was like, wow, like this is like, you know, I've seen you guys had that Christian Nightmare guy on there, but it would be like more like a Christian's dream, like I could just go to services all the time. Unfortunately, it was all like probably Assemblies of God theology, so it probably wasn't a lot of solid theology. But it'd been cool. It would have been like philosophers and theologians, and maybe had it lasted, I could have had an influence on that. But so it was really an interesting place, and to be a kid there. Because there was an arcade and there was a roller skating rink and there was a water park and there was pools and miniature golf and restaurants.
They only have Christian video games in the arcade?
No. They had No, they didn't have any Christian video games. See, that's the thing though. It's like, that's what we've done is we've created these like images and ideas of what Christianity was. And for me, it wasn't that way. Like I was allowed to listen to like Run DMC, and my dad took me to Striper when all the other Christians were like, literally took me to a bar, and they had to put us on the top because they were afraid they were going to hurt my parents. Like put us up at the top part of the bar that was closed so we could watch Striper play in this tiny little bar in the middle of like Rock Hill, North Carolina, or South Carolina. And it was like the guy who did all the video games was he was a foot doctor who got into the arcade business. It was Doc's Games or something. And so it was like Pac-Man and Centipede and Miss Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. And
that's so wild. So much that I didn't. I only realized recently how much of an event, like a destination point that was. I didn't.
It was Disneyland, Disney World, and then Heritage USA. So it was the third most visited place in the United States at the time.
Wow. I just didn't realize the scope of it until recently, honestly. And you've probably heard this talking point a million times, but the new season of Righteous Gemstones and them building up their water park and building out that amusement park.
I've never even watched the show, to be honest with you.
Okay.
All I know is that the intro to their show, not the show, but the show that's in the show is like almost exact. They ripped it off almost shot for shot from my parents' show. But besides that, I haven't watched it. Like for me, I'm like, man, you guys should hire me as maybe someone who helps you with that show. But, but honestly, like when I've lived through it, and then to see people caricaturize it in a way that's like,
sure.
I don't know. Sometimes to me, it seems like it adds a little bit to scapegoating and to like easy targets. And that was my life, it's hard enough seeing a film made about your family's life and hearing people have all sorts of opinions on who your family was. But for me, to me, that's just like, I think it would be too cringeworthy to watch for me. Like it would just be, because I've heard some stuff that they have like really hit on the nose. Like some people are like, oh man, they really got this. Have you seen it? I'm like, no. It was like when those comedians were doing all the videos making fun of my dad a few years ago, because my dad's kind of obsessed with the end times now. And I never ever was like, have you seen these? I'm like, no, I haven't even seen my dad's show, much less that. So, like I just, that's not where I need to go, because people forget like there's other people on the sides of scapegoating and jokes and things like that. Not that we shouldn't have jokes. I think comedians are brilliant and genius, and I don't think we should put muzzles on comedians, but at the same time, there's people who are part of it. So for me, it was like I grew up with enough of that stuff as a kid. I'm trying to be a good dad and run my own thing. And
no, that totally makes sense.
Study theology and philosophy, and so.
I could see why hitting that, like striking that chord, would make it not worth the time. But it was just when I was watching it and I saw it, my thought was, they're not hitting this. My thought was, this is insane. Like I never experienced or saw anything like this. And that's when I'm like, oh shit, no, this is something that this was happening. So I was actually really surprised by that. But that's the only reason I'm recent to understanding the scope of.
But I can remember being a kid and being with my dad and shoveling sand out of the pool at the water park, because they kept trying to get, they had to get fire code and all these different safety codes passed. And I got to go down some of those slides the first time. I thought it was even then it seemed like, here I was probably 9-10 years old, but even then I was like, well, this is kind of a weird idea, and I think that's where everybody thinks it was a theme park, because they had that, that was about it. I think there was a merry-go-round there, and I think that was about as themey as it got, but Yeah. So like, even I was like, no, this is a little bit weird, but it was also great as like a kid to be like testing out water slides, and I'd come down and I'd be like, oh no, my back's rip open. I think you might want to do something with that slide, and be laughing though, because you're like, I just got to go down a huge water slide and I'm bleeding, I'm 9 years old and this is amazing, but I then you start to realize it's like, oh, families aren't going to come if like the kids just have to sit through like puppetry ministry all day, So I think my parents were like trying to be like, oh, if we give them roller skating, if we give them a park, if we do this stuff, people are more likely to come out and do this because the kids won't be like bored out of their mind watching like, Southern gospel singers for, a month. Be like, I never want to go back.
That's
like hell
summer
for
camp.
the children, and like, yeah, it would be like summer camp. It's kind of cool, but it's cool because it only lasts like 3 days. After a while, you start to lose it. But it was cool growing up there. I mean, we also had security guards and things like that, so it was pretty much safe. I mean, it was a safe place to kind of be able to play and do stuff and hang out with people and a kid. And when you're a kid in the like 80s, you go on all these adventures, you get on your bicycles and you go on adventures, and, we would find the most dangerous places there, like if there was something broken down or not working or abandoned anywhere within like, an hour ride of a bicycle, we would, we'd find it, or, or have surrounded by all this cool stuff. And then we're building like tiny forts in the woods, like, cause water park's cool, but this tiny fort with rusty metal on it is way cooler, You got
to have a good story about you or one of your friends getting hurt somewhere in the park doing stuff like that.
Oh no, we constantly got hurt. I mean, even like one time we took, we had motorcycles, me and my neighbors, we had motorcycles that we would keep there on the grounds, but I was supposed to get my dad's permission to use them. And oh my gosh, I mean, one time I left without getting permission, and I got in big trouble. I got spanked because back then you could still spank. And we're driving around, and my other buddy's on his 3-wheeler and I'm on my Honda 50. Okay. I'll give you an idea. It's a clown motorcycle. It's very tiny.
I had one
tiny kid. Okay. And my friend with the 3-wheeler comes up and I turn and he goes, phoom, and his 3-wheeler just lands on, knocks the wind out of me. And I find out literally probably 20 years later that it broke my sternum, that I had a rib that was poking out my back. I finally got that fixed, but all my dad was just like, oh, you shouldn't have been doing that. You need to walk it off, walk it off. Okay, Dad, thanks.
Meanwhile,
three-wheelers are so like comically dangerous. It's like giving a kid a bag and be like, put this over your head. That'll be fun.
And this kid was the most hyperactive child in the world. Like this kid should not even been on anything motorized at all. But
that's so funny. Three-wheelers are notorious.
Well, and they flipped over. We'd be going up hills and these things started to flip over, and like kids were like breaking their backs on them and all this stuff. Yeah, it's like so dangerous.
For sure dangerous.
So you had full run of the place your entire childhood. I mean, you were from as early on as you can remember, that was your
well work. Yeah, but I mean it was also being built too, so like I walked through all those buildings when they were like from foundation until finish, with my dad. My dad was a workaholic, so I had to have bodyguards because we were constantly told that people were going to kidnap us and all this stuff. And so I had to have, me and my sister both had to have security guards, which was nice because then I could really go almost anywhere, but you also had an adult looking over you. So sometimes we try to lose them, but
cause that security guard some stress.
I know, real stress. Like I feel bad now. I'm like, God, they're probably thinking, I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, I know.
And
as soon as you couldn't see you,
I just find them weeping in the corner. Oh, okay,
I hate this job.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't blame it. But luckily, I had a couple really cool bodyguards that were really, they became like family to me. They were helping raise me in a way. So it was like
Denzel Washington and Man on Fire, or
candidate.
Which one?
Sadly enough, it's true though. I mean, like one of my security guards taught me how to ride a bike. And like, wow. So it was, and I've never played sports, but I know how to throw a spiral football because, my security guard was also a coach, so, it was cool. I mean, I got in trouble, I would play Miami Vice in the hotel lobby. I mean, in the hotel's because they'd have all these, the hallways and hotels, and so I'm running down, and back then toy guns looked real until all the kids started getting killed. So, I'm running down screaming like, freeze Miami Vice, and having my friends with fake bags of flour, which pretend to be cocaine. I probably should have been watching Miami Vice at that age.
That's a great game.
Yeah. But, and the fake money and all that stuff. But yeah, it was cool. But my dad, tried to, both my parents were like, okay, you can't take anything from the stores. You got to make sure you at least write it down onto an account, and all that stuff. So I think they tried to keep me from being too much of a hellion. But it was definitely interesting and fun. I mean, I was there till I was 11. So, yeah.
No, is that the point at which everything happened, basically?
Yeah, everything happened. Everything fell apart. My mom had overdosed on Valium, and it was just me and my mom. Actually, we were in Tennessee on vacation, and she overdosed on Valium. So for some reason, the doctors flew her out to California. And I probably wasn't the best idea, but they did anyway, because they knew doctors out there. I think it was like, because scandals weren't normal.
Quiet.
Yeah. So we fly out to California, but my mom's just like, her mind's gone. She just can't even focus. And it was really scary. And so we were out, we decided to take some time off. My mom went to Betty Ford, and that's when Jerry Falwell and all those guys came out and said, hey, Jim, we know that you had an affair or a tryst, I guess. I don't know, whatever a one-time affair is. Affair means carrying on. So I don't know, whatever, adulter, you adulterized.
Adulterated.
Yeah. So they came and said, this thing's going to come out. Jimmy Swaggart. I mean, it was really like a weird novel that, so Jerry Falwell comes out and says, Jimmy Swaggart's going to destroy you, but if you give us your church, we'll save you, and that type of thing. And it was this kind of like switcheroo, it was like, oh no.
Wow. So some,
we're actually going to take it. Yeah. It was crazy.
We graduated from Liberty. We are not going to sit here and listen to anyone say anything bad.
Amen.
About Grandpapa Jerry.
Grandpapa Jerry. I met Jerry Falwell actually, when I was 16, because he wanted to visit my dad in prison, and I didn't want him to visit my dad because I was like, this guy's going to come in and kill my dad. Like, I honestly was like, this guy's already done enough. Like, why would we trust this guy? And my dad sat me down and started like reading to me from like this book, something about the coats of many colors, and the importance of forgiveness and how we have to forgive our enemies and that kind of stuff. So my dad finally said, listen, you go meet with Jerry Falwell. And if you decide it's okay for him to come, then he'll come. If you don't want him to come. And I remember my dad's lawyers were so angry because they really wanted Jerry Falwell to come for some reason. And then my dad was like, nope, my son's going to make that decision.
What did he want?
I think he felt like, it must have been his biblical duty. And I think he felt that probably there was, if the man had any guilt whatsoever, I think he felt it a little bit. I think maybe if he had, any remorse, I think maybe he was like, oh, we really destroy these people's lives. And so he came and visited once. And I mean, of course, it's kind of like a biblical mandate that we're supposed to visit people in prison. Like even Billy Graham came and visited my dad once, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, we're going to do what we have to do. But most people did,
At least he didn't put him there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Can you flesh that out just a little bit more
Sure.
with Jerry and his influence on destroying your life?
Well, I mean, they came in and said, basically what they were doing was, it was kind of a hostile takeover in a way, but it was
after the arrest, after everything kind of started.
No. This is way before that. This is prior to that, when Falwell and them came out to California, and he had his lawyers and said the lawyers were representing us, and he had all of his guys with him. I think he had like 10 guys with him, and they're all in black suits. It was very intimidating. He had his lawyer, I believe his name was, I think it was Roy Gutman, but I remember him shaking my hand, and he was like, I think it was the same lawyer as the Penthouse guy. But anyway, he was like, oh, we're going to take care of you. He kind of came in like to my dad as like this father figure, like, we're going to save you. You give the ministry over to us for 6 months, and then you come back, just let us, otherwise you're going to get destroyed by Jimmy Swaggart, and you'll have time to, get your life together, whatever. So my dad's like, great. But he's like, you have to sign everything over to us, and you have to have all your board members resign, and I have to put them on board, which that would be obviously how you have to take over a church, because the board kind of is the bosses. He did that. And my mom told him not to, and she was right. She kind of felt something was off, and he did it. And then my dad would go to prison 2 years later because they said he wire fraud and mail fraud, but they said he had never planned to finish building Heritage USA, and that there were not enough rooms if everybody came at once, and so that he had overbooked timeshares and all this stuff. And so that was basically what my dad went to prison for. It wasn't for stealing money, but
it's almost like a Ponzi scheme.
That's what they were saying, rather than being like bilking, they always say bilking people out of $170 million, and it was like, no, it wasn't that. It was that they thought that he was like, a Ponzi scheme basically. And so that's what he went to prison for, and originally got like 45 years. We got got him down to 5, served 5. And then I think he had to do 2 years out, going to do all that stuff. But yeah, so it was a weird life, man. It was really strange to go through, because then, I went through high school and was in a Christian school for a little while too. And, all the teachers had opinions and everybody had opinions. It was actually, public school was actually easier because it was like, at least I was only fighting students rather than teachers,
Yeah. I imagine in public school, I guess it was obviously a national news story, but probably didn't pay as much of attention. Like, there were some radar a little more. There
were some kids that were bastards, in high school, I felt like I had the whole baseball team wanted to kill me, but I wasn't sure if that was because of my parents were, or because of their girlfriends. I was kind of smooth in high school. But yeah, so, you had everything, like, I got in really trouble because I almost got in a fist fight with a guy, and I did get in a fist fight with a guy in, I think it was history class, because he asked me how my dad liked getting raped in the ass in prison and that kind of thing. And so you'd get stuff like that.
Yeah, no,
every now and then.
It's pretty. I feel like that's a very lowbrow go-to joke for high school kids.
Yeah. But but what was worse was like in the Christian school, which was like a Baptist Christian school in Orlando, the teachers, it was like the teachers seemed to be more judgmental than the students. Like the students almost seemed to be more out of the loop. It seemed to be the opposite. And then the teachers were always kind of like, oh, this is Bakker's kid. Like it was, I couldn't sneeze without this teachers like writing me up for it. It was awful, And this was when my dad was going through his trial, and everything in my life was falling apart. And, you've got these teachers who are treating me like, like I'm a problem child rather than like, oh, this kid's going through a lot,
Right. And even if you were acting out, to not be able to look at the reason why and make sense of that,
right,
pretty fucking bad on their part.
Yeah, it was pretty out of touch. And
how long did the trial go? How long did that last? And I imagine you were around for a lot of that.
Yeah, well, I ended up having to drop out of the Baptist school for a little while, so I went to be with my dad and see him a little bit, but I think it went on for like a good 3 or 4 months. I remember that there was that tornado, Hugo, the tornado came through North Carolina and it came into Charlotte. It was like huge tornado, came really in deep into the Carolinas. And, I remember all that stuff, people saying things during the court cases and it was, I don't think I probably should have gone into the courts, but I did. I sat in a few of the trials. And the weird thing was, I remember it was like people like testifying that my dad fired somebody because they put the wrong thing on the hot dog or something like that, and I'm like, I was like, what's he in trouble for?
They're like trying to
witch hunt.
Yeah, well, it's almost like they're building a case against his character so they can show that it was a nefarious move instead of just like a shitty businessman move or something like that.
Yeah, it seems like it was kind of based on like, well, he lived a good lifestyle, he had a nice lifestyle, and maybe he wasn't a good leader. And honestly, in Bible college, I think if you're gonna like sign up to be a pastor, they should probably teach you how to do business and how to get a nonprofit and how to, hire tax accountants and things like that. Right? Just like they should teach us how to do taxes in high school. That would be great. Sense. So like, and my parents were kicked out of Bible college because they got married. Isn't that weird? Like in the, so in the late 50s, early 60s, you couldn't be married in Bible college. So they got kicked out.
Wow.
And they just
went on the road 180.
And so they went on the road and did puppet shows together, these Christian kids shows, and got hired by Pat Robertson to be on his network. And that's kind of how it all started.
So he's aged well.
Yeah. I really missed out. I started in puppet ministry. and I didn't stick with it. And I could have
ridden that horse home.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's kind of like, the funny thing about like watching the movie about my mom, because I mean, there's some things that aren't completely accurate there, but it's not very different than like like a documentary on a rock star or things like that. I mean, these people who just kind of start out and just things take off, and life gets crazy. So yeah, it was bizarre, right?
It is weird the way things just personality, right place, right time, like
charisma.
You put some people in front of a camera and they're like, nothing's going to happen here. And then you put some people in front of it and shit blows up in a good way.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, it was like, for my dad, in a way, it was like all of us with the internet, And it's so funny that we don't see these parallels often, or we decide to ignore them, But for my dad and a lot of these guys, it was like the television was like the internet. Like, oh, we should be online. Oh, we should be on TV because this is how we can reach more people with whatever our deal is. And for them, it was religion and Jesus and stuff. So they were just like, oh, this is a great idea, but it costs a lot of money. And it, and these guys are doing them. Like my dad had a television network, so they had no commercials, so it's like, like public access. You got to raise funds and do all this stuff. But then my dad wasn't happy with that enough. So he wanted people to be able to come to the thing. And so he starts building hotels and a water park and more churches and unwed mothers home, prison ministry and all, and all these, hiring all these staff and therapy and marriage counselors, all these people, teachers. And so now he's having to raise like $1 million every 2 days. And Of course he was into the prosperity gospel. So at the time, I think that was a bit helpful for him. Now he's more like doom and gloom. But back then he was all like, why doesn't God want us to be happy and have a good time? All that kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
that is quite a shift. Yeah. That I was going to ask you, how many survival food buckets do you think I need for my wife and I for the upcoming Russian war?
Well, yeah. Well, the funny thing I find about that is like, I don't really pay attention to a lot of that stuff. But when COVID happened, I was like, oh shit.
Good thing I got 40 buckets of grits.
What if he was right the whole time, No, and he stopped sending that stuff to me because I told him not to. When I lived in New York, he sent me some of that stuff, and I literally lived where my PO box was actually right next to a Salvation Army center. So I literally would just get it out. Oh, it's that. Go over to the Salvation Army and donate it to them. Be like, here you go. Because that was never really, that's not my thing. But it is funny to see like how horrific things have gotten in the world. And, you're like, like.
Now you're kicking yourself for sending back that
pound. Well, yeah,
I'm
like, when we all, everybody's going to be like, can we go to your dad's house now? Yeah. I don't think I'm allowed to go. So good luck.
It's interesting to like look at some of the stuff that you went through, because I feel like you almost got a glimpse of some of what was to come on a grander scale, or to become more commonplace. So, one with the media frenzy that is like a burn it all down and, anything to get the views and clicks and stuff like that. I mean, it sounds to me like that's a lot of what happened. And then
realizing how the media works to divide and conquer, really, and keep us divided, and, whatever sells, whatever the hot story is, and how lazy some reporters are about checking facts and different things like that. So I would say I felt like almost like 90% of the stories that came out about my family weren't true, or there was some other story behind it, that wasn't this like, I mean, I remember when my mom she got married and moved to California, and she gave me the choice if I wanted to stay in Florida and finish school or go with her to California. And I said, I want to stay in Florida with this family friend and all this. And like a week later, Inquirer magazine, Tammy Faye abandons her disabled son. And then there's just like a picture of me looking really kind of homely on the cover of the Inquirer. Yeah. Now, when you read it, it talks about my disability as dyslexia, which is true. I have dyslexia. But I mean, it was just that constant, like 3 things you're going to want to check out. And number 3 is going to blow your mind. You know what I mean? And you're like,
it's like a YouTube thumbnail. It's like,
yeah, no, but that's where they get it from,
They make it sound like she didn't put the brakes on and left your wheelchair on a hill or something.
Right, exactly. We just left him there. So, growing up, you come really disillusioned. I mean, even recently, like I had some a church historian actually saying some stuff about my family, and it was wrong. And so I contacted them and was like, because this person was kind of a colleague of mine. I was like, hey, listen, you've got this wrong. This is what happened. I actually know the story. I sat down and me and my dad discussed it when he was in prison. And they're like, well, no, I saw Wikipedia. And I'm like, no, what? And they're like, well, they're talking about Charles Shepard, who wrote that book in the 80s. I'm like, yeah, but he was a news reporter that didn't ever even meet with the family or anybody close to the family, and it was one of those things where it was like, they're like, well, you're just kind of naive because you're the son. And of course, they're not going to tell the son, that type of thing. And I was just like, wow, it's like, it's really amazing. Like I can be 46 years old and I'm still, the naive kid. And
yeah, so, it's not like you haven't done your fair share of forthright conversations about you've never shown any indication of trying to just like protect a family name. You've kind of gone off and done your own thing and to accuse you of that is probably really aggravating.
Yeah, it is aggravating. I also think people prefer that I would just throw my family under the bus. But life is very complicated and full of contradictions. I mean, I've been studying Hegel lately, and Hegel talks a lot about the contradictions that we have in our own lives and what that looks like. And people don't see that, and so when the right does one thing and then the left does another thing, and then we go at war with each other, and we don't see like there's like we're all carrying contradictions with us, and then we scapegoat each other. I think the weird thing about my family scandal is that both right and left kind of like scapegoated my family at the time. Like they kind of took all their anger towards Jerry Falwell's and Jimmy Swaggart's, who preached against sin and music and all this stuff, and just put it towards kind of like the people who weren't really that, but they needed like somebody, one of these TV preachers to follow. And so the ones that they picked, so they said horrible things about my mother. They said horrible things about my father. They said all these awful things. It was just, I don't want to say it was unfair because there was some stuff that was bizarre. There was things that they did that were different and strange and definitely Christianese, bringing some Christian stuff to the world. Doesn't look normal, but at the same time, it was very much like, oh, where's the forgiveness and where's the grace and where's all this stuff, and you never really saw that part of it. And so I remember just thinking as I got older, I was like, if this happened to my parents, like what happens to like small people in ministry when their lives fall apart? Does anybody show up for them? And if people don't show up for the bigger ones, are they going to show up for the smaller ones? And started to really recognize an inconsistency, especially in evangelicalism. And so for me, I remember reading Galatians, the book of Galatians for the first time and being like, well, what's this grace thing? Why aren't people talking about, and calling my dad and be like, why weren't we talking about grace more and restoration and, that we're all fall short, that kind of thing. And it seemed to be just completely opposite of what the Bible taught of how everything was going on at that time. So it's really strange.
It's kind of become like a sort of a tired joke, but we look at it like cancel culture or whatever you want to call it. And like evangelicalism's kind of the original cancel culture.
They totally are. And
I almost see it as like,
I'm always bummed out that to see people who call themselves progressives being into cancel culture. I'm just like, are you kidding me? You think if you do the same thing that those guys did, you think it's going to change people? One of the things I love about studying Dr. King is that he was always about restoration for everyone, because people are like, well, I won't meet with anybody who doesn't recognize my humanity. I get that a lot when I talk about grace. And I go, well, what? Thank God Dr. King didn't say that. And thank God Gandhi didn't say that. People like that, but they were always trying to realize like people aren't our enemy. Misinformation is. And so we have to have these hard conversations, even if they don't recognize us as humans. But when you get into conflict, and this is philosophically true and psychologically true, is you automatically have to recognize the other person, especially if it's face-to-face conflict. As a person, the humanity starts to come. And Dr. King got that. And it's something that I feel like we just continue to repeat over and over again. And I'm like, it's funny because, I watch my progressive friends get really upset about Joe Rogan, I can't believe he said that, but they're also getting mad that like people are banning books. And I'm like, okay, do we not see the contradiction here? Do we not see, that we're picking and choosing things here? And it might be time to step back and have a bigger conversation. But that's a lot more work.
Yeah. And I think part of the thing that is tough because it's something that exists in all of us to some extent is like, we all have this ugly preoccupation with punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Like we love to see someone get what's coming to them.
Yeah.
And like that never really ends. Like they never get it enough for us to be like, all right, you learned your lesson, you know. It seems like it just continues until we've completely eradicated a person. And the first place that I saw that was, you know, in my church. I watched them do that to a friend of mine over, you know, some silly stuff, and just basically like by the time they were done, there was just no place for him there anymore.
Right. And probably would not want it, you know, when you've been so hurt. And what they don't realize is like these people who have families and families who are part of the church and things like that, it hurts the family, it hurts the kids, it hurts everybody involved. And it's strange to me, like how also like people who like, they want to put the blame on one place, even in those situations. Oh, it must have been the pastor's fault, or it must have been that person's fault, you know, but everybody's participating in the system. And, you know, it's like being out here in Seattle, you know, I meet people who were part of Driscoll's church and they're like, oh, Driscoll, he was such a pastor and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wait a second. You attended his church. You went there above free will every week. You became a pastor on staff there. You knew that he didn't like women preaching, and you knew this and this, you know, and why is he a bastard? Like, you know, aren't you kind of like, you bought into it as well? Like we all play a part, and it's hard to accept that, you know, it's hard to accept that even we get like caught up in these things, and it happens that we're also human. And, you know, and so in some ways I feel like we project even like punishment onto the people, because maybe it's something we feel like we actually deserve, you know, unconsciously. So instead of, you know, subconsciously we throw it onto other people. And that's a cool thing about like why I'm a Paulinian speaker, is because, you know, I feel like Paul, the apostle, like I don't count the pastoral epistles as biblical. I think they're forgeries, but most of Paul's writings were, sorry, it's actually true, but that's okay. You don't have to believe me. But, you know, like it's all about restoration and getting like, you know, like especially in Galatians, is like getting the Gentiles and the Gauls to come together as a community and not to destroy each other because they have these different ways of thinking and different cultures, you know, and to recognize each other's humanity. So I feel like if you want to kind of really live that biblical way of living, you know, you would love your enemies, you would work on restoration, you would have hard conversations, you would never cancel anyone, you know, you wouldn't be firing people because, you know, stupid reasons. I recently met with this guy and he was telling me like, yeah, they kicked me off of the leadership team because I had confessed that I was looking at porn. I was like, you know, the only difference between you and the other 5 guys there kicking you off is that you're the only one who confessed it. Yeah. He's like, yeah, actually, you're right. One of those guys came to me years later and told me they looked at porn. Well, I'm like, you know, of course they looked at porn. They have a computer, you know, it's there. It's, you know, it's not like when I was a kid and you had to like hope to find a magazine somewhere, you know, whatever, somebody's dad's drawers. My parents didn't have it, so I'd have to go to like my secular friends and steal their dad's Playboys. But you know, now porn's at like the fingertip. Like, who's not going to look at porn, you know, that way? And so, yeah, it's just so much hypocrisy and so much like magical thinking. And I think that's what the church has become such a dangerous place. But you know, at the same time, I feel like the critics of the church too have kind of taken a lazy way out, and I think we just lack critical thinking and deeper thinking, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think that there's not a lot of academic rigor on either side. You kind of just say carte blanche, all religion's bad, see what happens when you have this, when you think this way or that. But of course, the other option to just let it carry on as it is not helping.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like legalism kind of is the problem.
Yeah.
And the problem is that's the one thing we don't let go of. You know what I mean? Like we have legalism in Christianity, like, screw this, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with this. It's horrible. And then we become the other side of it and we become legalistic. And then we're like, and now we're going to attack those guys with the same vigor that they attacked us or attacked these people. And it just becomes attack, this legalism and virtue signaling and just who's in this camp and who's in that camp. And so it's like, that's not how you change things. You change things through having good conversations, through friendships. You know, what is it that Dr. King said? Love was the only force capable of changing an enemy into a friend. You know, and when I say we argue well, is one of the things I say a lot at Revolution. It's like we have to learn to argue well, is because yes, there's going to be arguments, but we're going to argue well and embrace conflict, because if we avoid conflict, we end up just going straight to war. And we learn to sometimes even compromise or find the dialectic of the two opposites and say, what's the truth above the dialectic? What's the truth above the contradiction?
Now that being said, it's got to really hurt your feelings what was done to your friend and contemporary Jerry Falwell Jr. I imagine you guys were tight.
Yeah, we were close. I had an invitation to the hillbilly. No, I'm just kidding. That's supposed to be a white trash party or something.
Did he play basketball with you, or did he mostly just watch from the sidelines?
I never met him. I know that they came around a few times when I was a kid, when the takeover happened, because I knew they were friends with one of my friends, and I was really angry about it, or one of my friend's older brothers, and I wasn't happy about that. But no, I never met him. But here's the thing about like Jerry Falwell Jr. is I often thought like, I don't know if he claimed to be a Christian or not, but like he grew up in that, and that was business to him. You know what I mean? And so I was always like, did this guy like, what was it for him? And did he have kind of some ideal, like, was he setting himself up unconsciously to destroy himself? Because it was just like by the book, and what happened, I mean, I don't know how his dad would have handled it, because it was almost like the same thing of like how his dad would have handled my dad. He would have cut him loose. I mean, I made a few jokes because I couldn't resist. I did write something, and it was like on Twitter, and I was like, hey, listen, if you want to just like have me oversee your job for 6 months, maybe we can work something out. So that was probably a little cold-hearted to do, but
I applaud you.
Oh, that's a good one, man.
Yeah. I thought maybe he'd find that a little funny. But yeah, no, it was messed up, man. It's weird because these guys get in like these bubbles and their own world, and like no accountability, and and they're closed. But also, my point is like they're closed off to anybody who doesn't agree with them.
Yeah, they insulate themselves a ton.
So when they insulate themselves, that's what worries me about. Like, I'm more left, obviously, very left, and a leftist, if you will. But it's like I worry about that sometimes on even the left side, is that we're going to insulate ourselves so much, and that we just keep blocking each other out, that we create our own worlds, And it's like, because sometimes we just need somebody to come in and just be like, dude, this is nuts. This is insane. Like, look what you're doing. Like, I know this is not going to make you feel good, but you need to hear what you're doing. And I think that's what happens to a lot of preachers. Because I remember asking my dad, like, why do preachers like dress crazy? Like, why do they wear like white suits? And they look at Benny Hinn, he wears this crazy suit. And I was just like, I was, why, Dad? And he was like, well, son. And he said the same thing. You become isolated. And you get around with people and everybody's like, oh yeah, that looks great. Oh yeah, that looks great. Because they don't want to say like, you look ridiculous. You look a spaceman. You know what I mean? And he goes, the next thing you know, you look like an idiot because you surrounded with yourself with a bunch of people who are just like, yes, oh yeah.
Man, just Emperor's New Clothes shit over and over.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
A true friend will tell you can't wear a cummerbund with jeans.
Yes. I mean, my best friend's from Northern Ireland, and so there's no way I can get away with shit. Even if I look like freaking Han Solo on his best day, I mean, he's still going to take the piss out of me for like my boots or something. You know what I mean? Like, or Don Johnson in Miami Vice, he's still going to take it. He's like, I could be James Dean. He's red's not your color, mate. He's not. So whatever. I don't know. It's good to have people around you who are willing to tell you the truth.
Yeah. It probably is lacking in a lot of circles.
Yeah.
So I want to ask what salvaged did you have a point at which you were like, I don't know about any of this shit? Or did you kind of stick with faith, like the Christian faith, and just salvage it? Like what?
No. For me, it was like around 20, I had developed quite a ability to drink a lot. I had actually started Revolution with some friends of mine in Arizona when I was 18. 18, 19. And then I quit. I said, guys, I'm done. And I need to go away for a while. And I moved back to Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta because my dad was in prison the last 2 years of his prison. He was in Jessup, Georgia. So I moved to Atlanta originally when I was a teenager to be close so I could go visit my dad. And I moved in with this pastor's family. And, but then I went and did Revolution and all this stuff after my dad got out of prison. But the reason I left Revolution was because I thought God hated me. And so I was like, I don't really want anything to do with this. And so I just like, I'm going to drink. I'm going to get a normal job. And that's what I did. And I was living with this pastor's family. And my buddy, D.E. Polk, was going to school to become a pastor and all this stuff. And I was just miserable. I would just sit out in front of their house and chain smoke. And then at night go out and drunk and come back and sometimes wake up on the front door because I couldn't get my key to work, And one day I was like, D, like, you talk a lot about grace, and honestly, I think you're just trying to help yourself sleep at night because I don't believe this grace shit. I said, but prove it to me if it is really real, like this idea of concept of grace. And he said, read Galatians, read the book of Galatians. So, okay. And I read it, and then he said, read Corinthians, read it, and I was like, whoa, like all this concept of this, like, you are accepted, really blew my mind. And so it kept ringing true to me. And I got, all of a sudden I was like, so God loves me if I'm a drunk in the, on the front stoop of the house, or if I'm like an evangelist, yeah. And I was like, holy shit. And so the next thing I know, I went and became a part of a 12-step program to get sober, because it was like, all of a sudden it wasn't about God's approval or disapproval or any of this stuff. And now I'm 46. So over time, it's changed a lot. But the one thing that stick true in my message is always grace. So even in times of complete disbelief, grace is still there. And so, yeah, it kind of just developed over time. And I continue to speak at festivals and at Christian festivals and do things like that and talk about, like, yeah, we need to love our gay neighbors. We need to love, pray for our president if it was a Democrat, or something that they never wanted to do. And I was always the controversial speaker. Oh, you talk too much about grace. You talk too much about this, whatever, but I was also like, what a lot of people call deconstruction right nowadays seems like just saying the church sucks. And it's shit, the church sucks and it's shit. And I don't like that. I'm like, that's not deconstruction. Actually, for me, deconstruction is like Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic and biblical history, and going in and researching all these things and finding out what was all this stuff actually about. For me, it's a lot of really hard work. And for me, it was hard as dyslexia. I didn't have the internet at the time. So I had to have like 15 books, but like 4 or 5 books out in front of me with like this, what's this Greek word? What is this? What was the history? Why does Rome have this history? And what was Rome's laws against this? And why were they occupying this territory? And and really had to go in and find all that stuff out. And just realizing like the American church is really far away from the original concepts of Christianity. And I mean that like liberal church and conservative church. I'm capital C. I'm not saying either side has got it right. I'm saying like we've really moved away from something. And so for me, it has just become more and more like to the point where now we call Revolution Gathering. We don't call it church anymore. I'm not comfortable with the title pastor anymore, because I see so much division within the church. That's just not my thing. And so for me, I question atonement theory and all kind of things like that. So some of the really big ones, like I said, pastoral epistles to me are we're really trying to clean up Paul's work. Sorry, guys, are you still there?
Yep.
But the pastoral epistles are like written to kind of clean up the inclusion of Paul more than, anything, because he was probably too inclusive. So I've got those ideas. I also read a lot of philosophy and Paul Tillich and Dr. King and things like that. So that's definitely changed how I see things, but also having the life experience that I had, I don't like to take easy shots. You know what I mean? So I don't like to take like easy shots at people and discount them. And I like to try to think critically. So when I see pastors make mistakes or I see Christians make mistakes and do dumb stuff, I try to like take a critical look at it. And also look through their understanding and maybe their limited understanding or their lack of critical thinking. And when I see like a lot of scapegoating going on, it's like for me, I think theologically about everything, or maybe I deconstruct everything. It would be an even better term. Like, so when I see preachers in sneakers, like at first I'm like, oh my God, that guy's shoes are like, it's 2 months of my rent. Like I can't even take care of my kids barely, and I pay my rent. And, this guy's buying sweet shoes, but then at the same time, I have to be like, okay, but why is he able to do what he's doing? He's actually got a job. He's actually doing it well. What's happening there? What's he touching in people's lives that makes him able to like not have to think about $2,000 shoes and be successful as a preacher? Is he really a scam artist, or is he just someone who's just an amazing communicator? And so always looking into things like that. Not that it, I don't have a whole lot of room to judge people, I have my own shit, so it's like I have 15 pairs of Dickies, so I don't know. I'll let you ask the questions instead of guess what the questions are going to be.
No, that's great, man. I appreciate you going down that road. I mean, that's what I've picked up from paying attention to what you've had going on over the past year. I mean, most honestly through doing this, start paying attention to a lot more than I did beforehand, and seeing that direction that you're going in, or that you've been going in for years, and I'm just tuning into. I think is great. That it's. I'm not going to say that I don't sit back and judge people. I do a lot of shit posting and making fun, and that's what the internet's all about. And it does get played out, and there are moments you look at that and you're like, what are we doing? Lately, I've been seeing people, talk about, you retweet something and make fun of it, and you're still publicizing whatever it is that someone else said that you thought was stupid. Twitter is a fucking weird ass word.
I know,
it's
like
so
everybody's it's like so many people policing.
Yeah,
like it's either like I totally agree with that, and that guy's a son of a bitch, or it's like
wild.
Like, why would you say that about that person? Or why would you do that and give that person a voice, even though you're disagreeing? It's like, God, I can't really do anything,
Yeah. But your position of withholding judgment and taking care of your own shit. I know it's hard for people to wrap their minds around, because if we don't call out the bad, and that's different than not judging it too, I guess. But walking that line and figuring it out is what's not really happening super well. So even if you fuck it up along the way, I think the fact that you're talking about it and trying is dope.
Well, and the fact that we we go after people with such vigor, piss and vinegar in a way, with such venom, it's like when we don't know the whole story, and that's always tough for me too, is because I've been on the other side.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and I know I remember one time these people were making fun of something of Mark Driscoll because he'd mentioned his kid. And his kid was like putting on like fatigues and stuff because he was afraid of the media out in front of their house. Now, honestly, I had almost the exact same thing happen to me when I was a kid. When I had all the media, I put on like fatigues and went out, took pictures of all the media and all this, because your brain can't cope with what's happening to my life. And these people were kind of like, oh, I bet you made this up. And I went in, I was like, well, actually, this is something I dealt with as a kid. And honestly, I think as kids should kind of be off limits. And people got really pissed at me, and I've had people like other talks, like other things on Instagram or Twitter when I was like on there, and people were like, this guy needs to denounce his family, his family did this, and I'm going in there like, well, it's not that simple. I mean, this is his family, and they're like, you're not adding anything to the conversation. I swear this time it was like a therapist who was like, you're not adding anything to this conversation. Would you please leave? That
is so dumb.
Oh okay. But that's how it is. I mean, it's everybody's kind of got into this very legalistic like way of thinking and very judgmental way of thinking that, the world isn't going to change. I mean, the church will definitely die. And if people don't start arguing well and learning how to communicate and learning how to disagree, social media is not helping, but I get why we like to get angry. I get why we judge. I mean, I do it too. Also, I mean, we all do it, but it's a kind of thing of asking ourselves, why do we do it? Why do we feel the need to do it? And I'd say with all the garbage I've been through and all the hell I've been through, it really has helped me love my enemies more, and not be as critical of all the evil. I mean, I got like when I became gay affirming, I guess in 2006, I think it was 2005, 2006. And I lost everything. Like any remotely conservative person, or not even like middle of the road person or middle left person, abandoned a ship. Like I had a staff of like 6, we had insurance. Everybody, I had to lay off everybody within like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like all my speaking at like Cornerstone and Life Fest and all these crazy festivals done. Like I was canceled, just call after call. You're canceled. Oh God, and you've gone too far. And my mom's dying of cancer, and people are more concerned about, my stance than my mother's, my well-being going through this with my mom, and it showed me a lot. So, but they're so scared. There's so much fear. And I'm grateful that for the experience I've been through, because I don't have to live with so much fear. And I'm able to speak up when I feel like this is the important thing to speak up about and talk out about, and I remember trying to encourage really big people who like are seen in very progressive circles as gods, but like going to some of these people individually saying like, have you thought about being more open and affirming and doing it? And now they're all open and affirming, but like people were like, I can't do it. It costs too much. Look what happened, blah, blah, and, but everybody's on a journey too. And that's the thing is I don't think often we allow time for people to take their process, to grow and to learn and things. We want everybody to arrive to where we're at, and like, I honestly think like, my mom is getting a lot of good press lately and a lot of people are think great things about her, but she was never fully affirmed, and I wonder, like, would she have had a place in today's world where everything is like, no, you got to make a decision. You got to either say, yes, you're with us or you're against us. And if you can't, there's no middle ground. But what my mom was able to do was she was always able to reach out to drag queens and conservatives, and little old ladies and, whatever, everybody, gay community, this community. And she just loved everybody. And she was able to do that. And it makes me worry that we don't have a place for that anymore. Or like when I look at, like, I know when Shane Claiborne a few years ago spoke at Wild Goose Festival, a lot of people protested him because he's never come out as affirming.
Oh yeah.
And to me, I'm like, man, this guy is like a saint in so many ways. Like, he's turning guns into farming equipment and fighting the death penalty and all this stuff. Is like, maybe we should make some time for him, and I've had conversations with him too, but the thing is, like, maybe we've got to like realize that not everybody arrives where we want them to be, but the fact is if we cut everybody out and we make them feel shameful when we do this, we're not going to have anybody in our group. We're not going to build a movement. And I think that's what Dr. King understood, was that there was room for repentance. There was room for grace. It's not that you didn't have to pay the price for bad things you did or things like that, but there was still enough room for grace for people to be restored, to be built, and to be in community. And I'm afraid that we're getting away from it a bit, and that hurts us.
I think that's true. And that is one of the things that bothers me too, is like the hardline stance when it becomes to other people. And yet, you talk about contradictions in our own lives, like everybody, no matter how far left and how progressive and stuff, everybody loves someone that ain't there. And it's hard to have a conversation about someone else, someone that the person you're talking to doesn't love or value, and say, yeah, this person's behind on things like race and sexuality and gender and stuff like that. But they're not a bad person. Like, I love them. They're a good person. They would never treat a person like that with contempt or anything like that. They're just not there ideologically yet. And the call to like cut those people off is ridiculous to me. I don't understand it. And I think that, that's a lot of times the problem that I have with the quote unquote deconversion movement, is that it's so black and white about some of that stuff. And it's like, I think part of it is it's a reflection of, there's a woman in our Discord channel today that was talking about, just the stress and anxiety and stuff like that was imposed on her about like dating a non-Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Or, she had dressed a certain way and got a bunch of flack about, being a good role model for the youth group and stuff like that. And like, my initial reaction is like, God, why are those people like that? That's so ridiculous, all the problems that they cause. But I did those.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely did those things with people in my life. And maybe that's what makes it so repulsive, is knowing that like you did those, that was you not that long ago.
And a lot of it had to do with us being brainwashed by that. But we're also being brainwashed by other people who've been kind of brainwashed. And I think we want to find like the villain with a top hat curling their mustache. And the problem is it's just not black and white like, there's too many complexities there and nuances. And when we take out the complexities, when we take out the nuances, when we take out the contradictions, then we can have our black and white world. And, to me, that's just not humanity, but for me also, it's like, I also like had to read so much to get to the place where I'm at now. I've had to put in a lot of hard work to, I was on a podcast recently and I had somebody with a doctorate in philosophy just challenging me on almost everything I believed. I'm all self-taught. The only time I've ever gone to seminary was just to take classes for fun, just so I could learn more. But I never went to seminary. I just asked the seminary if I could come and take some of their classes so I could learn a few more things, that I was looking into. And they said yes. And I was lucky enough to do that. But it all came from reading and studying, but it's a lot of hard work. And sometimes I just think that people don't want to put in the hard work. So it's much easier to just discount others and start your own group and tear each other apart. But like with some of these like deconstructionists, I'm friends with them, and sometimes I'll send them messages being like, dude, you were so much better than this. I've seen you guys that had like the Christian Nightmare guy on, and there's times I just want to like send him a message. I wish I knew who he was, because he's put up stuff about my dad before. And my mom has this fan site and all these people, he put up something that was on my mom's fan site and people made fun and attacked him, and the fan site had to go private. And so I tried to talk to the Christian Nightmare guy about it, but he wasn't really into it. But I told him I got it. I understood where he was coming from, but at the same time, it's just, I think we could be better than this. You know what I mean? It's like, we're taking all these cheap shots, but also like, what we don't realize is sometimes when we destroy these people, we don't realize what else we're destroying. We don't realize, like, what are these people doing for the homeless? Probably more than us. What are these people doing for the poor? Probably more than us. What are these people doing for people overseas? Maybe more than us, And so it's like, is there any good coming out of it? And can we talk about that as well? And maybe these can be the things that create a common bond for us rather than taking these easy, like punchline jokes, And I get it. Like if nobody knows who you are, it's a lot easier to do that shit. But, for me, that's where I have a hard time.
Yeah.
It's like, show me your face. Don't hide and make fun of people. That's like the preacher and sneaker guy. Nobody knew who he was for a long time. And of course he was always in with all the evangelicals, hung out with all of them. You know what I mean? And kind of is.
Really?
And so to me, it's like, I made my hard statements with my face out. My dad said a lot of dumb shit that I don't agree with, but his face has been out there, and that's like, for me, it's like, if you're going to judge and you're going to come in hard, you should be willing to do that. Face value, face first, because that's punk rock. Punk rock is seeking truth and confronting, injustice face on. It's not freaking hiding behind things. And so for me, a lot of that time, that stuff, that just, it creates a toxic atmosphere. It just becomes so easy to throw people under the bus, and everybody's just like, we relish it. Oh, and as much as like when people always ask me to denounce my dad, and I'm just like, I'm the one person up until about a year ago, me and my dad haven't talked for over a year. And it makes me really sad because I don't know why. But up until probably a year and a half ago, I could talk to him and have really tough conversations. And so a lot of these people, I was like, yeah, you want me to denounce him and say this, like he's not my father or he's a horrible man or all this stuff. But I'm like, I can talk to him about this stuff. I'm the only voice with this opinion that's able to go in and have these conversations. And what you're asking me to do is cut that off. He's also my dad, who I never really knew until he was in prison, because he was a workaholic. You know what I mean? And prison will bond you with someone going through that experience where everything's gone, everything there's nothing left. And it's like death in a cage in a way. Those moments bond you together, and people don't know what that's like, And so for me, like, I have that bond with my dad as almost a prisoner, the least of these. And so like, yeah, I'm not happy with him. Yeah, I don't agree with food buckets and things like that, and I do find them silly. But at the same time, it's like, even to know that we're not even talking right now, I still have grace for him, because I know he went through a lot of hellish shit. I know he went through a lot of hellish shit as a kid. He was molested from like 6 to 16 by a pastor.
Oh my God.
And in prison, I know he had to fight for his life quite a few times. I know most of his friends and people turned his back on him. Maybe he had a mental breakdown in prison. I don't know. But giving grace in this atmosphere, trying to love people and love the others, and trying to love your enemies is really hard. And what's even harder is trying to love other people's enemies. And so it becomes really tough to do. Like, I feel like I can't move in certain circles anymore, because it's like all these rules and regulations of what an ally looks like here, what the person looks like over here, And so I'm just trying to be, learning to accept myself for who I am has actually helped me accept others more, because I've had to accept my imperfections. I've had to accept that, I'm a recovering people pleaser in my own life, not in my work life. I just piss everybody off, but in my own life, I'm kind of a people pleaser, and I had to confront that and deal. It probably destroyed my last marriage, because I was so afraid of confrontation in my personal life, because I was doing all of it out in my professional life. And so, it's really, I don't know. It's really tough. I just wish. I was really actually excited about having this conversation with you guys, because I went and checked out your Instagram and stuff. And, I was like, oh yeah, see, there's some people who are really angry about this stuff, but hopefully I can come in and say, oh, there's also this side of it. Cause I've been on the other side that's crushed, you know what I mean? And that's judged. And I could literally like find the new gospel of Jesus Christ and show it. And it would be like, Jay Bakker, son of Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, disgraced ministers, and finds the lost ark. You know what I mean? Like, that's always going to be there. That's it. That's always going to be the headline. When I do a podcast, there is no podcast I have ever been on or no interview I have ever done in my life where I don't talk about my parents, And so people ask, well, what does cancel culture do? It's like, well, I'm 46. When I was 11, my parents went through a scandal. I'm still talking about it. When people find out my kids who are 6 and 4 right now, who they are, they're going to probably be asked about their grandparents, and have to live in that, So like we put on the scarlet letter, and that's so unchurch-like. I really feel like if a lot of people had understood theology better and understood biblical history better, and even how Jewish storytelling works, we would look at Christianity in such a completely different way, and we'd be having such different conversations. And the church would be the last place to scapegoat, and would be the safest place to come for all pieces of shit. Everybody who's screwed up, because we would be restoring people and helping people, and we would be the people who don't escape. Now, we might be hated because we love the people, but that's a good reason to be hated. Is why was Jesus such a troublemaker? Is because he was, he wasn't just hanging out with Pharisees sometimes, but he was also hanging out with tax collectors. I mean, Matthew was a tax collector. He was like literally a traitor to his own people. He would be, it's like, for liberals, they would see him as like Matthew as one of the people in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. You would think that's Matthew, but he also had a zealot. So he'd also have the anarchist kid. There was a zealot in the, so he had all these weird guys in his group and who were like, wanted to kill each other and stuff, and just in 12 of them, it was quite an eclectic group of people. And you see that. And then you see Paul saying there's neither Jew nor Gentile, male or female, we're all one in Christ, we're all one. He's saying there's no hierarchy, there's no lowarchy. Or when Paul says, I went and met with Peter and stuff like that, but his reputation really didn't matter to me because God shows no favorites. Like if we just keyed into a few of these things, we'd realize like Christianity is probably not the problem. It's probably people, and it's a sense of not having a deeper think. I'm having critical thinking and not being willing to think on deeper levels. And I think that's what we have to do. I think our biggest problem is probably anger, legalism, and shallow thinking. As I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, as people, not you're directing that as humanity, that towards humanity.
As humans. Yeah, all of us, not just religious people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love it, man. I'll even take the shade at some of the shit posting. You should see the things
I have
we
a
don't
few
post.
shit posts myself. No, I know. Well, you should see what I don't post. I also go in and go really angry, and then go like, okay, I can't say this, or if I'm going to say it, I need to figure out a way to put it into a talk because there's no way I can put this to be understood. I've said some horrible shit. Like that's the thing, is like knowing like what allows me to give grace is knowing my capability to throw shade just as bad as anyone else. My thing is I throw shade even more now in some ways, like in my friend, like with me and Pete and stuff, when we're talking about different groups, because now I was like, I can like, oh, look at the progressives over there. And, oh, look at the conservatives over there. And, oh, they're all a bunch of assholes, but we have the secret knowledge, so you got to make sure you don't fall into that either. Only if you read Hegel do you truly understand the secret message of Jesus.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to turn into this like esoteric group of people that.
Oh, so there you go.
Man,
God, it's tough, guys. I mean, this is tough. And think about it, is we're in the middle of like, COVID, and we could be entering into World War III. Life is really horrific.
It's wild right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's like this baseline anxiety across culture, right? Like across everywhere. That's all people are talking about. That it's crazy how much, we used to not know things. We used to not actually know what was going on. Maybe you have to check the 6 o'clock news and you'd get snippets, but man, the internet stresses everybody out. Like you can't stop knowing and learning. And well, maybe you're not could redefine knowledge. Maybe that's probably not what's going on, but just that constant influx of like death and doom and gloom
and not knowing what's true and what's not true.
And about things you can't do anything about. Not that, again, but then now that you can be informed, you maybe should be, because there may be something. Walking that line and trying to figure out how to find that balance in life it's rough and it sucks. And I think especially now when everyone's just an armchair scholar about foreign policy and shit like that, you're like, it's exhausting. Like the age of information has allowed everybody to feel like they're a fucking genius. I'm not impervious to that feeling. Trust me.
Well, me either. Like, and that's what's been good about having a best friend who has a doctorate in philosophy, is he just never takes anything for face value. And so he always ends up looking into things deeper. And so I'll come to him and be like, have you heard this? He's like, actually, did you look at this and look at this? And, oh, damn it. Because it takes the fun out of it. You're like, I wanted to be angry. Now you're out. And then I want to be like, oh, no, you're just wrong. And if actually, am I? Well, why don't you look at this and read this? And you're going, oh, damn it. It's more complicated. Like, I was ready to throw Joe Rogan under the bus, and then then I read like where all Neil Young's like 50% of his money goes for his music. And then I was like, how is this guy calling this guy out? You know what I mean? And I just went down the thing and I didn't realize, and I'm like, holy crap, like Neil Young's music like goes to this like Blackwater. I think it's called Blackwater. I'm not sure if the name of it right now, but like a group that fights against equal housing opportunities and kicks people out of their houses and raises rent, does all these awful things. And he sold it, but he doesn't say like, hey, don't buy 50% of my songs because it does really horrible stuff goes to really horrible things, and who's going to have the
of all private mortgages in the last quarter of 2021 were bought by private equity firms, including BlackRock's the biggest one.
And they're buying up musicians. Now, I never thought I would have to worry about like, maybe I'd have to worry about what my musician thought, but maybe I could ignore it if the music was good enough. But now it's like, I have to like worry about like who owns the music to the bands I listen to. Not only am I a hypocrite because I buy an iPhone every couple years, and little kids are mining for the materials in the iPhone, or I'm not studying like who the cocoa beans that go into my kids' chocolate treats that I buy them, but now I have to worry about the thing I love most is music. It's like,
everything's tainted. Everything in this world is tainted.
And so to just take you back to a biblical thing is like, that we all fall short kind of thing really does line up. Or don't judge, because how you judge, you will be judged. It kind of makes sense, and I know that there's a lot of triggers probably for your listeners when they hear like Bible verses spouted out like that, but what's the intent behind it, and what was it really trying to say to us? And I feel bad for people who've been abused by bad theology and by sick people who are trying to fight their own demons through theology and made other sick people. That makes me really, really sad. And I hope we can move on from that and realize what it is. And, it's tough, I want to, kind of off subject, but still on subject, is like, like when the guy who wrote I Just Kissed Dating Goodbye,
yep.
He recently came out and was like,
Joshua Harris,
I denounced this book, and I'm sorry I wrote it. But there were people who were like, screw you, bro.
Yeah. Damage done.
Damage done. Too late.
Yeah.
And the one thing I love about Grace is Grace never says it's too late. There's a great Paul Tillich talk on it, and you can get it anywhere on Google just to read it. It's called You Are Accepted by Paul Tillich. It's phenomenal. Everybody should read it. Christian, non-Christian, whatever. It's just on the concept of grace. And it's really a beautiful written talk. And Tillich was a philosopher and a theologian, kicked out of Germany by Hitler if you need any more encouragement to read his stuff. You should definitely do that. But like for me, it was like everybody was so mad. And I was like, no one wants to take their responsibility in reading the Josh Harris books. And so someone was yelling at me about it. And I go, hey, listen, man, I had a book out at the same time. I was totally taking the piss out of Josh Harris back then. I was told, like, so much so that when he spoke at events, he would bring me up, not in a good way, and I'm like, But the fact is, we wanted him to repent. We wanted him to say this was crap. Now, it might have taken him 20 years. Maybe that wasn't our time limit, but that's what we wanted. And we should be grateful for that and encourage him and say, thanks, thanks for finally speaking up. Cause you ruined my first marriage. But also for me, I'm like, guys, I was telling you not to read that book. You just chose to buy his book at the Christian bookstore rather than Son of a Preacher Man at the bookstore. So
it is funny when you think about there's so many people that had the same upbringing as us, and we knew those kids that were like challenging what was being taught, that didn't buy into it. Or even if it wasn't anything that grandiose, they were just existing in that space and still living kind of a normal life.
Yeah.
Like they dated girls in high school and went to dances and just acted like a normal teenager, and like, not only did I not do those things, I took pride in not doing those things. Like that was a point of pride for me that like, we're not like the others, we kind of were crappy towards, there's one guy that always comes to mind in that regard, but my buddy Garrett from high school, he was always seen as like Garrett's, he's kind of worldly. Like he has friends that don't go to this Christian school with all 12 of us, we have to be a little worried about Garrett, but we all could have been that. We chose not to, and we took pride in not doing things. So now to I don't know, there's just it's a weird. And
most of us ended up getting divorced anyway. So we can't blame Josh Harris. Yeah. Philly's 50 and in the church, 51%. So I don't think it's all Josh's fault.
I know. I mean, divorce rates are kind of the same throughout church and outside of it. So how much is he really responsible for?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they are the same. I'll take that back. That's why they're the same. Because of Josh Harris.
Yeah. What was so funny is I sent a direct message to Josh on Twitter and I was like, hey man, I'm really sorry you're going through all this shit. The church can be cruel. And he was like, thanks, man. And here we were 20 years ago, like, totally giving each other shade, you know what I mean? And now we're both like, this is tough. Life is tough. So
we talked to him last year. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He seems like he's trying to undo some of the wrongs that he feels
and how cool. I mean, like how cool is that? It's not only going out and saying I was wrong. Now screw you guys. I'm going to go live my life. He's like, also, I want to come out and try to undo some of this that I've done. I mean, I think that's one of the best things we can hope for.
I think that's what was frustrating. Like he had some missteps along the way, and I understand why people got upset about it, and they're totally right and entitled to be as upset as they were. But he could have just been like, yeah, fuck this shit, and then moved on and did his own thing. Some people think he's nefarious and that he's just trying to find a new crowd to,
I think I would,
but I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's actually trying to undo.
Just don't buy it. Just don't buy it if you don't like it. It's that simple.
And if you're in your, I mean, this is back then is like everybody was trying to find the new thing, so there are reasons that I was writing my autobiography at 23 and why Joshua Harris was writing a book on dating at 23. I mean, how much dating have you really done besides like high school, kind of maybe some college dating, but you haven't done any real dating, unless you got your Christian and you got married at 18. I got married
because you date your wife. Yeah.
Yeah. I dated my wife and that was it. But what I'm just saying is like, too, it's like, book companies and the church's hunger to have the new thing and the hot thing and whatever it is. And it gets people talking, and they knew they had lightning in a bottle. If somebody's going to say, well, I'm going to say no more dating anymore. They're like, hell yeah, this book's going to drive people insane. People are going to love it and people are going to hate it and it's going to sell, and so that's, this is Jim Bakker's kid and he's covered in tattoos. He should write his autobiography at 23,
Yeah.
Really? Like I would love to roll back and rewrite that book, and I still may one day, you know what I mean? Because it was like, I'm a much different person and I see my past in a much clearer,
I think the way you should rewrite it when you do it, I think you should do it with like wide margins and just have all your edits and stuff crossed out and publish it that way.
That's a great idea, actually. I used to use a wide margin Bible. I really liked it. I could write all that.
I'm in school and I just started up grad school, and for the first time in my life, I've actually got excited about wide margins. I was like, holy shit, that's what this is for. I can write in it.
I mean, it really, wide margins are a game changer
Yeah.
for any studying. Like, I kind of wish some of these philosophy books that I'm trying to read had wide margins. I'm writing these like the people who write on rice, you know what I mean? I'm like, these little notes, you know? So I'm like, I won't remember where this is if I don't write this little tiny note to myself.
Yep.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
That because I haven't asked you enough questions about your dad, but this isn't just about your dad and your family. This is in general. Like, you talked about how, looking at that movie, like the story mirrors the biographical epic of like a rock star or an investment banker, whoever you want to put into that. It's success, right? And I'm curious what you think. Like, does great success, like does huge success, does it confuse, co-opt, or corrupt a person's values?
I mean, and a lot of people, yes, and some people, no. You look at people like Bruce Springsteen, who's like stayed true to his work, or people like John Lydon, or people as Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, who's like done their work the way they wanted to do their work, or people like Johnny Cash. He kind of veered off for a little while, but then kind of got right back on it. But for every like those stories, there's like 1,000 stories where success went wrong. You look at Big Pharma, you look at what was the guy who did the DeLorean? You look at the DeLorean guy. You look at like all these different people, and you see these success stories of people's lives falling apart. And we see a lot more of those, which it's funny that we get more into those because they're so relatable. Like, I don't know, like I've never had a staff over like 7 people. Like, my dad has staff of like thousands of people. I would make me insane, and they kept the same accountant that they had when they were meeting in like, an old furniture store that they did when they had like these giant churches. It's like, that's probably not the best thing for them. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice lady. I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but you might want to get a proper accountant. You know what I mean? Like, she started off as a volunteer. You might just want to buy an account firm. I think they have whole firms that do accounting.
Yeah. Why don't you franchise your own TurboTax?
Yeah, right. Let's do this. But so like, it's hard. Success is hard, and being surrounded by people. And then in religion, I mean, you get mentally ill people, you get grifters, I think you do that in any place in society. It's not just religion, but religion's gotten a lot of it. But
adding the power of God behind your ego, megalomania doesn't help.
Well, and when people start saying like, well, you're the man of God, and stuff like that, gets a little creepy when you start thinking every thought you have is the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Or if you're a billionaire, like sometimes I see these billionaires, talking about investments, and they're like, well, what about, if you invest in Amazon, but, well, what about how they treat their workers? And like, oh, well, we don't look at that. We have to look at the bottom line. It's not really how they treat their workers. It's like, how is it as a business? You're like, okay, so when you have $1 billion, all of a sudden people don't matter. So it's not just televangelists or mega preachers, it's also billionaires. It's also Amazon, and we all play in this, and the most ironic thing is where we tear each other apart is on Facebook, owned by this millionaire who seems really out of touch with society, or we do it on Instagram, owned by Facebook, or we do it on Twitter, and Twitter's not done a whole. So we like, our overlords give us these platforms for us to destroy each other, and we ignore what they're doing, and I mean, if we've got asked everybody who listens to you, like, hey, could you pull up and just show me the last time you shopped at Amazon?
Oh,
today.
Within the last 36 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I ordered a Bible commentary 48 hours ago on Amazon, and I haven't heard anything about workers not pissing in bottles anymore.
Yeah.
So that's just like, let's all like, if we're going to judge, let's judge from a place of reality. You know what I mean? And for me, like, the biggest problem is probably what I feel like is this whole thing we've been talking about, and even beyond that, is really boils down to capitalism. Capitalism has reached a peak where it's just gotten out of control. And what it does is it promises us, and this is what religion does, it promises this, the wholeness.
That's why they tie together so well, I guess.
So to fill this void, right? Well, we'll fill that God-shaped hole or whatever, get a new car and you'll be happy, or get these books and you'll finally have the knowledge that you need. And you don't. And then you have to go buy more. I mean, and all these empty promises, I mean, if you look back at slavery, what was slavery? Slavery wasn't just like, so we can treat people horrible. No, it was so we can have free labor or cheap labor. Like when I see my people who work at McDonald's down the street from my house, I think like these people could work 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, and still not be able to afford health care, still not be able to afford rent, barely be able to put gas in. So they're having to work 2, 3, 4 jobs to do that. And it's like, so ultimately, what's more evil in this world? Or is it these televangelists that are spouting off about religion, which we all could just ignore? Or is it the fact that most of us can't go to the doctor? Or like, I just got health insurance, but I couldn't afford to get dental this year. So I have to ignore the left side of my mouth for a year. I'll just chew on the right side. It's okay. You know what I mean? But that's the world we live in. So to me, it's like all us being like, this preacher, this person. Like, to me, it's like, is it really relevant? And if we do want to help these people, then let's start things that really do help people, or let's go meet with these people. One of the things I loved working about with this group called Soul Force, which was this LGBTQ Christian organization.
We used to protest them at Liberty University.
Well, there you go. And they protested you guys. So you guys kind of all protested each other. See? Equality. But so I would go with them, but we would go and I met with Joel Osteen. He wouldn't meet with anybody else with Soul Force but me. So me and Joel Osteen and 2 of his guys in a room, like having a conversation, really awkward.
I'm sure. I'm surprised you walked out with your eyesight not being blinded by.
Actually, he was. I felt like here's a guy who wants to be affirming, but he has too much. Too many people around him. He has too many people.
The shareholders don't like the idea.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. It was like, no, this is not going to happen. Matter of fact, one of the guys like stood and put their arm on his shoulder when I said about being affirming, and they put their arm on Joel's shoulder and goes, this church will never be an affirming church.
Oh my God.
It's like, Joel, time to stop talking. So like, but we went and we met with these people. And then we said, if you don't meet with us, then we'll protest you. Like sometimes when all this stuff came out about my dad selling this stuff, Silver Solution, and somebody said he claimed that it could cure coronavirus and all this stuff. And I watched the tape and I was like, it seems like the lady said it. I don't know if he was agreeing with her, but I was like, I'm going to call these Christian right watch groups and talk to a few of them. I said, hey, did you try to contact my dad? And one guy was a pastor. So this works better if it's a pastor. I'm like, well, biblically it says you're supposed to try to go to them first, and you didn't even try to call, you didn't see to get a phone number, nothing. Well, no, we don't, that's not how we, And so for me, it was like, well, like, what do you expect? We're not even doing, nobody's doing the right thing, And so I don't know. It's sad, guys. I wish I had a message of hope. I mean, my message is that we should educate ourselves better, not trust the media, not trust social media, and learn how to care about people and love our enemies better. It's funny because it's like, I have a very different view of like what I am. I don't consider myself a confessional Christian, but I do follow Christianity and find myself to be very much a Christian in that way of, I really do believe in grace. So if someone asked me, do you believe in God? It's like, well, I am really trying to love my neighbor as myself, and also trying to love my enemy better. And I'm really trying to have the tough conversations and take the road less traveled, for me. But that's all because of grace and just that Paul Tillich type of grace of you are accepted that he talked about. So for me, that's it. It's like, to me, there's something really special about Christianity that it's just sad that if we throw it out, we miss out why people like Hegel, one of the most amazing philosophers in the world, thought there was something special about it, or why people like Paul Tillich or Martin Luther King really thought it was brilliant. It's like we miss out on some of that brilliance because, our youth pastor didn't give us an extra slice of pizza during the party, Yeah,
man, I love it. I think that's as good a place of any to end it. So
fantastic.
Yeah, dude, thanks so much, man.
You're welcome, guys.
Casey, you looked like you might have had a final thought. Am I cutting you off?
My alarm went off. I got to go take my colloidal silver.
Wow. And try some Silver Solution. I've heard that's really good for you. No, but yeah. And if you guys want to do a follow-up for this, because I know we just like covered everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour, I'm glad to do a follow-up part 2. Heck, we could even get somebody on here to disagree with me. That would be fun.
We'll facilitate our first debate. Hey,
yeah, we just have
you got
Josh Harris on it, and we just blast him like a 3-way blast.
Yeah, let's do that. You guys can get the masked Avenger on, and me and the masked Avenger can have a conversation.
Yeah, we sell
because I'm like Iron Man because I don't have a secret identity.
Yeah.
I'll wear big Iron Man glasses too. Do my best.
Yeah, it has to be
Robert Downey Jr.
You have to be in superhero costumes. I'm here for
Perfect. This. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for the conversation. And to everybody listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.